All right, welcome to the Young Turks. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur. We have a phenomenal show for you guys tonight. I have not one, but two exclusives for you. A story that the Young Turks broke last night. I'll tell you all about it in just a second. Nomiki Konst did that for us. And then an exclusive ad against Dianne Feinstein that you're gonna see in a little bit. And I promise you, it is hard hitting and you will enjoy it. So a little bit later in the program, I've got good news for you guys. It's starting to become a trend, isn't it? Good news for progressives. I got another electoral win, and I've got more tipping points in the middle of the country. It's two different stories. All of a sudden, good news in America. Interesting. Okay, and then of course, also bad news. So we know who the YouTube shooter is now, and what apparently might have motivated her. And that is an interesting and wild story. And of course, we've got Trump tribalism. So two different interesting stories on that throughout the hour as well. It's a packed show, let's go. Nomiki Konst last night reporting for the Young Turks broke a story about Democratic Party politics in New York. Now this is a really, really important one. It revolves around not just Democratic Party and the Republican Party, but the Independent Democratic Conference, that is the IDC in New York. See, if you're not familiar with New York politics, what happened was a group of renegade, that makes them sound too cool, Democrats broke off from the Democratic Party and decided that they were going to work with the Republicans and swing power in the Republican direction. Now, that seemed to coincide with the reign of Governor Andrew Cuomo, and I'll give you the details on that. That was greatly frustrating to progressives in New York. And Nomiki last night broke the story that the reign of the IDC is over. Interesting, so here's a tweet in the middle of the night. I think she had it at 12:30 Eastern. Breaking, insider sources say Governor Cuomo calling for an independent Democratic conference to disband as soon as tomorrow. Another source, a last minute call with the New York State Senate Democratic Conference is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Now that all turned out to be true and now confirmed by the New York Times and others. And she does have excellent sources, bless her heart. So let's go to the New York Times for an explanation of what happened. Two warring factions of Democratic lawmakers, they explain, have agreed to reunite and even end, I should say, 7 years of infighting that has helped give Republicans a foothold of power in Albany in a dramatic upheaval of New York politics. Now I'm going to tell you why Cuomo is doing this today. Now, Cuomo will say, oh, golly gee, me, I don't have anything to do with the IDC. That's not my group. That happens to be a breakaway group of Democrats that has nothing to do with me. Let's find out about that. An alliance in the state Senate between Republicans and a renegade group of Democrats known as the Independent Democratic Conference was formed during Governor Andrew Cuomo's first week in office. Okay, well, that's our first clue. So, he gets in the office and then all of a sudden there is this breakaway group that somehow happens to hand Republicans power. Now, if you're asking, why would a Democrat want Republicans in power in any way, even this weird convoluted way? Well, it's so that whenever he passes anything, he seems like a hero. Oh my God, I got it passed anyway. And whatever he doesn't want passing, the Republicans, I know it's a deeply blue state, but the Republicans made me do it. The IDC, what could I do? There was nothing I could do. Did we give more advantages to all my donors? There was nothing we could do. In the first week, it was not well disguised. Okay, so for years, Mr. Cuomo, again, the New York Times continues here, had said it was not in his power to arrange a quote shotgun marriage between Mr. Klein and Miss Stewart Cousins. She leads the main Democrats in New York. And as a deal came together, the governor was very much in the middle of it. That's interesting. He said he had nothing to do with it and couldn't do anything about it. All of a sudden he's doing the deal and he's right in the middle of it. In fact, he's the one orchestrated. Nomiki reporting that he's the one that called the meeting. He's the one that led the meeting. And at the end of the meeting, the IDC was gone. Turns out there was a lot that Governor Cuomo could do about it. He just chose to do it now. And the timing is interesting. So let's get into that. Why is he doing it? Well, he has a strong primary opponent, which is, of course, making him move to the left. Say it with me. Of course, progressives fight. Even if you don't win elections, it forces Democrats pretending to be progressives to actually take more progressive positions. This happened last time when he was running as Zephyr Teachout too. He moved to the left on a number of issues, and here he goes again. Now Cynthia Nixon is running against him, and she's not buying it. She says, if you've set your own house on fire and watched it burn for 8 years, finally turning on a hose doesn't make you a hero. Well, I kind of love that quote. That's a strong, powerful quote. Now, speaking of Zephyr Teachout, she's now working with Cynthia Nixon on her campaign, which is, by the way, unity. Democratic establishment, that's how you actually do unity. She says Mr. Cuomo's role in unification amounted to, quote, a confession of his complicity of Republican control for the last 7 years. Well, it's really a fair point. If you said there's nothing you could do about it and all of a sudden you're the one who ends the IDC and they started a week into your tenure and then you end them whenever you like, makes it seem like there was a lot you could have done about it at any time that you wanted. Okay, Cuomo now announced that Klein, who is the leader of the IDC, must end the IDC altogether. This is according to State of Politics. It's a website in New York. Stuart Cousins will be the sole leader of a reunited Democratic Party, and Klein will serve as a deputy. So when you issue an edict to the so-called leader of the IDC, you will end your group now, and he bows his head, it looks like you were in charge. And as they explain further, without Cuomo's support, Klein has nowhere else to go. Might as well negotiate the terms of your surrender before your options get even worse. So an anonymous Democratic insider said, we can now leave this ugly chapter behind us and work together as one party. An ugly chapter. An ugly chapter. Okay. Then Cuomo, funny enough, went and gave a speech right afterwards. This one was public. The meeting that ended the IDC was in private. By the way, attended by powerful forces within the Democratic Party and including Joe Crowley, who's a congressman and a power broker within the Democratic Party. And if there's going to be any backroom deal, Crowley's going to be in it. And apparently he was fine with the IDC. He was fine with the Democrats not being united in New York. And all of a sudden they decided, oh, by the way, not only does Cuomo have a primary, but so does Joe Crowley, with a very progressive Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's a Justice Democrat. All of a sudden, Crowley and Cuomo get together and like, we need unity, right? I mean, we're progressives, right? Of course. IDC, what do you guys do? Come on, let's end this. How awfully convenient. Okay, so Cuomo goes and gives a speech publicly afterwards and says, we have achieved political clarity. Well, that's good. I'm glad that this primary has caused clarity for you. So what's the clarity that you've achieved? He says, the clarity is this. Everything we are for, they are against. It's that simple. The Democratic Party and the Republican Party are an antithesis, one of the other. It took you 7 years to figure that out? I mean, this is preposterous. It's all a matter of convenience for corrupt Democrats. They don't want to win on the policy issues. When it comes to their own race, they desperately want to win and hold on to power and raise the money and then wield that power on behalf of the people who gave them the money in the first place. But when it comes to policy issues, they don't really want to fight. They don't really want to win. So they'll use any excuse to make sure that, oh, golly gee, we lost again, even in a deeply blue state. Nothing we could do. So now all of a sudden, he's running in a primary, he's challenged on the left, and he's like, I just achieved clarity. I had an epiphany. It turns out the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are two different parties, and they're opposed to each other. Why didn't anyone tell me? Pathetic. Now, one last piece of curious timing here. Well, they have a kumbaya moment, and the Democratic Party is reunited in New York. Well, I guess it looks like from the facts here that Cuomo could have done it any time he wants. why did he do it on this particular day? I mean, Nixon announced her candidacy recently. Obviously, that's a huge part of it. That's the main part of it. But listen to this timing. The deal, we go back to the New York Times here, the deal comes less than a week after lawmakers passed a $168 billion budget, a spending plan, Ms. Teachout noted, in which Ms. Stewart Cousins had been excluded from the negotiations. So the leader of the Democratic Party, not included in the, obviously in the legislature there, not included in the budget negotiations. The Republicans are there, the IDC is there. They make a budget that is, again, on behalf of the donors. What a wonderful coincidence. The donors keep catching these lucky breaks. And then right after they're done with the budget, then Cuomo turns around and goes, I ended the IDC. I mean, I never had any control over it, but I ended it. I should get credit for ending it, but I should get no blame at all for starting it in the first place and maintaining it for 7 years. What a bad break. We already spent the money. And so now the Democrats will not have any real power, the progressive Democrats at least, will not have any real power in how the money is spent. All these weird coincidences surrounding Andrew Cuomo. Are we really having a conversation about whether he's a progressive? Look, these machinations might work to get him some endorsements, and he has a giant name recognition advantage, we realize that. But as I said on the day that Cynthia Nixon announced, she's got some name recognition too, and she's a strong progressive. And the country and the state of New York are in a progressive mood. Let's see what happens. I think this race is far more interesting than people realize. Okay, Cuomo thought he was gonna be president. Okay, that's funny. All right, let me go to the other player in that drama for a second. So Joe Crowley is congressman from New York. He's very powerful, arguably one of the top Democrats in the House. Why? He raised a lot of money. I'm gonna show you that money in a second, but there's someone finally challenging him, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She is doing phenomenally well. Crowley's never had a challenge like this before, hence me dubbing her Alexandria the Great. It's a fun name. Yesterday on the program, we had Mighty Mary Wilson, who's another Just Democrat running in Texas 21st District. You should check that out as well. We have all of our interviews with these great candidates on youtube.com/TYTpolitics. So Alexandria now is collecting signatures. She's trying to get to 10,000 signatures to make sure that she's on the ballot and everything's kosher. Of course, what does Joe Crowley do? He controls a lot of the Democratic machine in that area. So conveniently, all of a sudden, voting areas are beginning to change. Oh, that's a heavily minority district that might favor Ocasio-Cortez. Yeah, we're not gonna vote there anymore. The polling station is gonna, oh man, what a break. We're gonna have to move the polling station. I've seen this movie before in New York. Remember when all of a sudden voter purges right before the primary? So this is in some ways, and this is happening throughout the country, but this is a particularly important race in New York because Crowley is such a huge power player in the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders versus Hillary Clinton all over again. Now, some of you might say, I don't want to re-see that movie. And some of you might think, I'd like to go back to that movie, but give it a different ending. So, and here's your opportunity. So Ocasio-Cortez, very progressive, just Democrat, takes no corporate PAC money, Medicare for all. Crowley has to be brought to some of those positions like Medicare for all, only after he gets a primary opponent. Before, he was not for Medicare for all. Just Democrats introduced Ocasio-Cortez as a primary opponent and then support the Medicare for all bill in the House. And all of a sudden Crowley goes, yeah, that's what I meant, that's what I meant. Yeah, interesting. So why does Crowley have all this power within the Democratic Party? Is it because he's really progressive? No, it's because of the money, Lebowski. So let me show you the money that Crowley has raised. So here's a list of his donors. Now this is his total in his career. So if you add out securities and investment, insurance and commercial banks, that's around $4.2 million. So that's the financial industry. Real estate is also incredibly powerful in New York and leads to a lot of corruption. That's $1.6 million. Together, that's about $5.8 million. Now, Crowley looks at that and other Democrats look at that and go, bravo, way to raise a lot of money from bankers. Excellent job, Crowley. Real people look at that and go, what are you gonna do on behalf of the people who gave you $5.8 million? You think that bankers gave Crowley money for their health because they thought it was a charity? No, they gave that money for a return on investment, an investment that they have reaped over and over again, and hence donations to Crowley over and over again. But here comes Alexandria, and she doesn't take any of their money. She doesn't take any of it. So how are you gonna corrupt her? Well, you can't. Well, that's the beauty of it. So let me show you just this last election cycle, because if the first time the bankers gave you money, it might have been an accident. The second, the third, the eighth time that they give you money, it is not an accident. That means they did get their return on investment. So here's the latest Crowley chart from the latest election cycle. Look at the bottom there. Can you tell which industry gives Joe the most amount of money? Oh yeah, there it is again. Finance, insurance, and real estate at $726,000. So the money keeps on rolling in. Those are not nonprofit contributions. Those are investments. And so Joe the Banker Crowley doing great with those guys. So what can you do? Well, look, the only way the small donor candidates and the no corporate PAC candidates are gonna win is if you actually get their back. So Ocasio2018.com/last call to volunteer, because she needs volunteers. She's got 100 volunteers right now. She needs 200 volunteers. Let's make that happen. Get out there and get those petitions signed, get her on the ballot. Ocasio2018.com/fight to donate, because your dollars go way, way further for Alexandria than the banker dollars does for Crowley. The Just Democrat folks are much better at spending money because they largely rely on volunteers and grassroots. Look, if she's got 10,000 signatures in that primary, that might be enough to win to begin with. Crowley's never really been challenged. A lot of these folks are gonna win. Brent Welder in Kansas got a big lead on a Republican incumbent. Mighty Mary Wilson's in amazing shape. You got the Liberty Bell, Adrian Bell in Texas. You got Doug Applegate in California, who drove ISA out of Congress. You got Allison Hartson in California, who's closing in on Dianne Feinstein, and the list goes on and on. And then you got Iron Stash against Paul Ryan, and he raised over $2 million in the last quarter. We're coming, but you gotta start right now. You gotta start right now, you gotta start fighting. So join Alexandria, get there in the fight, and make sure that you are represented rather than the bankers. Okay. By the way, always the links are down below. Okay, go to the description box if you're watching on YouTube, or in the comment section on Facebook, and easy to click. Just go right there, boom, and get in the fight. Okay, so now, Young Turks exclusive. Allison Hartson has decided to focus on income inequality on a fitting day, the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King's assassination. He was doing a poor people's campaign when he was assassinated, and he cared deeply about bringing everyone together to make sure that there was justice for the poor and the middle class. And Allison Hartson is running against Dianne Feinstein, and she's given her a hell of a run. She outraised Dianne Feinstein in small donor money in the last quarter of 2017. She's got a volunteer army of over 1,400 people. And I'm gonna tell you about how you can join in a second. But we have a fun new ad that she has put out. Young Turks have an exclusive on it. I think you're gonna love this. Let's watch.
Dianne Feinstein is worth $80 million. Her husband is a billionaire. Income inequality isn't the problem for her, it's the solution. Dianne Feinstein voted for the Bush tax cuts and to repeal the estate tax. Dianne, how many tax cuts are you going to give yourself? Dianne Feinstein is never going to fix this problem because she is the problem. I'm going to represent you, not the wealthy elite. I'm Allison Hartson, and I approve this message because I'm going to get money and Dianne Feinstein out of politics.
Damn, booyah. Now we got a race, folks. She's not playing. Look, a lot of people come in, they play patty cakes. Oh, well, the honorable, gentle lady from California has great intentions. No, she doesn't. She voted for the Bush tax cuts because her family's billionaires. She profited to the tune of millions upon millions of dollars by voting for those Bush tax cuts. She voted for Bush's Iraq war, and then her husband got hundreds of millions of dollars in defense contracts. And they had to take her off of a committee because she was giving her husband defense contracts in the middle of the Iraq war. No, Dianne Feinstein does not have good intentions. She keeps giving herself break after break after break. You think Dianne Feinstein, who's been in politics for 50 years and never delivered for you, is now all of a sudden gonna turn around and be like, oh wait, the poor and the middle class, I forgot about them as I was giving myself tax cuts over and over again. No, and finally you've got a candidate who's willing to say it, who's willing to call it out, and who's willing to fight for you guys. So you gotta get in the fight. So look, there's number one, this ad is awesome. I wanna spread this everywhere in California. So in order to help her do that, you gotta give her money to be able to run that ad so more and more people see it and see the reality of Dianne Feinstein. So look, we'll have links down below. Click those links, really easy, and help raise money for the ad or get involved as a volunteer. So as a volunteer, AllisonHartson.com/now. The link justdemocrats.com/Allison always works to donate to Allison. Just click down below. If you like the message that she's sending, help send the message. Dianne Feinstein, corporate Democrats, we know what you're about. We know you're never gonna do Medicare for all. Dianne Feinstein went and did a town hall where she said she's not ready yet for Medicare for all. Yet? I mean, you've been in politics 50 years. What do you mean yet? Okay, and then coincidentally, a week later, she went and raised money from the healthcare industry. It is corruption 101. We don't have income inequality in this country by accident. We have income inequality in this country because people like Dianne Feinstein voted for it. It hurt all of us, but it helped her family tremendously. Why don't you get one of us into Congress to represent you? Allison Hartson is a teacher. Then she took a pay cut to work for a group that wanted to get money out of politics. Why to get money out of politics? Because if you don't, the money corrupts everything. Allison's not taking any PAC money. That's why you got to get in the fight and help her. Be part of Allison's army. Let's have a giant progressive victory. It will shock the world. And Allison's strong enough to make that happen. Let's go right now. Let's get her 2,000 volunteers and let's get her at least $10,000 more to run that ad in digital and perhaps even on television. It appears that Hartson is coming. Okay, we're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna talk about that anniversary of Martin Luther King when we come back. And we've got a lot more news for you guys, including good news for progressives and victories in Wisconsin and a great fight in Oklahoma. We'll come right back.
The American elections are designed to suppress the vote. They're not designed to get people fired up. They don't want people interested. We live in an oligarchy. None of this matters anyway. Your democracy has already been stolen from you. 90% of the people in America want some kind of gun regulation. We don't get it. 80% of people want a public option. We ain't never getting it. So legislation does not correlate to the citizenry anymore. We already live in an oligarchy. Capitalism is failing worldwide. Not one question about Brexit. Not one question about what to do when the banks fail here. Not one question, nothing. So it's the establishment with their head firmly in the sand, right? And just there needs to be a revolution in America because all of our institutions are completely corrupt, especially the news media, right? So we've got 6 companies running all the things that we hear and see, and this was a perfect example of how they're part of the problem. Again, Trump, not the problem. He's a symptom of the problem. This is all part of the problem. This is why half the country doesn't vote. Hillary Clinton's still not trying to go get those people to vote. What she's trying to do is trying to get more right-wingers to vote for her. Still not trying to talk to the people who have tuned out of this election because they know there's no way to vote against more war. There's no way to vote against Goldman Sachs. There's no way to vote against more fracking or the oil industry. There's no way to vote against. Both parties are co-opted by the same people, and we need a party for the American people.
That 300 million is a pretty good number, we were doing a press release on it, and I got all worked up. And I said, okay, well, that's the size of the US population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world on the road to 6 billion. Although by the time we hit it, it'll probably be 7, maybe 8 billion. Not a big deal. A couple of days ago on the TYT network, we passed 1 billion views.
What the hell?
What the hell?
No, that's a big freaking deal.
2 billion views.
What now?
Sorry.
What did we do? 2 billion?
2 billion.
They said it couldn't be done, but it was done.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking, one day.
We looked at you like, are you nuts? Young Turks crosses 6 billion views. They said you couldn't do it, you can't change the media, don't try. Well, here we are, we're changing the media. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Doc, I'm telling you, the talking, this therapy, none of this is working for me.
Grace, I want to try something new with you today.
Really?
Yeah, bear with me. What do you see?
Blood.
Okay.
More blood.
Okay, good. What about this one?
Buckets of blood on the floor.
Okay.
The Zodiac Code. A disembodied head. John Wilkes Booth.
Okay.
John Wayne Gacy. A dead body, your dead body.
But instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring.
All right, back on the Young Turks. I got some excellent tweets for you, John. Oh, look, John Idarolo, everybody. Hey, how you doing?
Surprised myself.
Nice little Jurassic Prick t-shirt there from John Idarolo, which you can get at shoptyt.com. I'm not sure I'm saying anything.
Yours won't have bagel crumbs on it, don't worry.
Okay, we do not send it with that, no. All right, now tweets, John. For a more perfect America, says Namiki Kantz being a beast of a reporter as always. Agreed. Dances with says it would be nice to have Dems bow to progressives like they do for the GOP. Well, we're working on that, as you can see with the Cynthia Nixon race. And by the way, and the Cortez race and the Hartson race. Feinstein all of a sudden supporting a lot more progressive positions and getting out there and being like, oh, right, I'm against Trump. In the beginning, when Allison first started running, she's like, well, I think Trump can get better. I think he could be a good guy. Allison gets in the race. She's like, "Oh no, I'm opposed to him. I'm going to make him do things."
I don't think it's Allison. I think just as she's you go through your life, you change.
Mark of the Beast says, "Hey Democrats, getting primaried makes you see clarity. Duly noted. Expect more primaries from Justice Dems."
And related to that, I hope that every one of those, the Justice Dems and the non-Justice Dems that are primary opponents right now, get in. And in 2 years, most of them might need to be primaried. Push them even more in the right direction.
Yeah, look, the point is to get enough folks in to get money out of politics. We have to act. We've got to have a level playing field. Because if you don't fix the core of the problem, the rules, right? Well, the money keeps flooding in. You got to turn off the tap. So once you get real uncorrupted candidates in, then you push for an amendment 100 miles an hour, and we get that amendment, okay? So
I think one of the hopes that we have is with Donald Trump as president, he bankrupts the government, crashes the economy, there's no money to go into politics. There's your solution.
Well, that would be a roundabout thing. All right, last one. Dancing Queen says, I feel like all the progressives you mentioned, Cenk, are like our Avengers. Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, that'd be a good shirt.
Oh, yeah.
Who's the Iron Man? Well, there's one person who could be if he wins.
Are you kidding me? Iron Man is the most obvious thing in the world. There's a candidate named Iron Stash.
I'm right there. I'm right there.
So yeah. No, there's some Avengers out there, and they will avenge away on primary night and in the general election. All right, what's next?
Okay, it's a special day. It is, of course, the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And it's a day that people are approaching in their own ways, understandably. I mean, some people who were involved in the actual activism with MLK Jr., talking about their experiences. It's a time to reflect on what was lost when he died, to reflect on his legacy itself, and for a lot of people too, to consider where we're at now and what has changed for the better and what has not changed for the better. In fact, some things that have gotten worse. And so there's a million, we've covered anniversaries like this before, and there's a lot of different ways that you can approach it. And I have a few in mind, but of course we can talk about pretty much anything you want. One thing I did want to talk about was what he was working on when he was killed. And so in the weeks leading up to his assassination, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was preparing for what would have been his greatest demonstration, the Poor People's Campaign. King's coalition across racial groups, united in their fight to end poverty, aimed to recruit over 1 million people to occupy the National Mall, from Latino farmers' rights activists to white Appalachian coal miners. King's lesser-known dreams sought to bring disparate communities together in the name of economic justice. And to give you just a taste of some of the things that they wanted to push for, it was an economic bill of rights for America's poorest citizens, a $30 billion annual appropriation to fight against poverty. Obviously, that would be much more now. Guaranteed income legislation and the construction of 500,000 low-cost housing units each year until slums were eradicated across the country. And so very ambitious, obviously, on a topic that doesn't necessarily get talked about all that often when his legacy and his work is discussed. I mean, you even see some things that are decades and decades ahead of their time, like some sort of guaranteed basic income of some form, something that we're just now circling back to consideration of here and around the world. And so look, very interesting. And we'll have a number of quotes and some interesting statistics about the areas that he worked in. But I like to think, man, imagine if he'd had that. Imagine if that could have continued through in the way that he had planned.
Yes, and of course, an assassin's bullet ended all that. So once again, poor people in the country were not represented, and the takeover of Washington D.C. did not happen. Another lucky break for the powerful. So speaking of which, I want to read a quote from Dr. King. It's the next graphic here. He said about going to D.C. and bringing a parent, if they could, and knowing Dr. King's legacy and his accomplishments at the time, they probably could have. He said, we ought to come in mule carts, in old trucks, any kind of transportation people can get their hands on. People ought to come to Washington, sit down if necessary in the middle of the street and say, we are here, we are poor, we don't have any money, you have made us this way, we've come to stay until you do something about it. What does that sound like? That kind of sounds like Occupy. So I bring that up for two reasons. One, the man was so far ahead of his time, it is astounding. Whether it's the guaranteed income that people are now finally talking about, all 50 years later, or the Occupy movement. And the second reason is he knew something that the mass media and our politicians have been avoiding for these last 50 years, which is that things don't happen by accident. That that you can change the rules, and the rules have all the effect in the world. So for example, on the issue of race, they changed the rules so that it allowed African Americans in the South to be able to vote. The Civil Rights Act made a giant difference. What was that? That was legislation. That was changing the rules to make it more fair and seek justice. And on the issue of income, it is the same situation. In fact, in a lot of ways, it is more clear. So they lower taxes on the rich. That's a rule, that's a law. They changed it. You could say they rigged the system on behalf of the rich and corporations. They just did it again, to the tune of trillions of dollars, right? And then you say, well, a higher percentage of taxes are gonna be paid by the payroll tax. That's the one that you put in for Social Security and Medicare. Who pays that? The middle class pays that. That's how you rig the rules. Are you gonna have more affordable housing? No, that's how you rig the rules. Are you gonna have more deregulation for multinational corporations? Yes. So that's how you set the system. And what he was saying in that quote is, it's not an accident that you're poor. There is actually something we can do about it. So let's go and demand that our representatives represent us.
Yeah, the system piles weight on top of you and then makes you feel bad for bending over, basically. So there are some quotes that I want to read. Before I do that though, I do want to say one thing, because obviously we're remembering this particular individual because of obviously the 50th anniversary of his tragic assassination. But in the past, especially in the past few decades, a lot of people, a lot of them who look like me, remember him in a way that really does a disservice to both him and the movement that he represented. And there's a variety of different ways that happens. Obviously, there's the constant sanitizing of what he stood for, of the positions that he was a radical on, his views about other countries, his focus on not just segregation and racism, but also economic justice and things like that, his interest in environmental justice as well. So many different aspects of his own history get sort of washed away in remembering him. But then also people will remember him in a way that to some extent stresses too much one individual. Now, he deserves to be recognized, obviously, but he existed inside of the context of any number of other groups and individuals, some of which had been working and organizing and pushing for change for decades or a century or longer before he was alive. And he was a continuation of that. And so I do want to recognize some of these quotes, but we are not in any way trying to say that this is all that he was. He was obviously much more. With that said, here are some of the quotes that stood out to me. The rich nations must use their vast resources of wealth to develop the underdeveloped, school the unschooled, and feed the unfed. Ultimately, a great nation is a compassionate nation. No individual or nation can be great if it does not have a concern for the least of these. And so I definitely liked that one. He was not simply focused on the United States. Obviously, he understood not just how the system inside of the US has held back purposefully many here in America, but that we and other Western powers historically have done that to a great number of other countries as well.
One other quote that I'll paraphrase here, it's actually in one of our shirts that the Young Turks offers out there, because I loved it so much, is similar to what you were saying about him earlier. And it goes to the effect of, a man cannot ride you unless your back is bent. Not only did he have great dignity, but he had great strength. So he has been mischaracterized on purpose in a lot of ways. There's the hilarious thing of Fox News trying to take ownership over him, saying, oh, he was a Republican. Preposterous, right? And then saying, oh, he saw past race, so we shouldn't talk about race anymore. That's not what he said. And even in the I Have a Dream speech, he talked about the vicious racists down in Alabama. And he talked about brutal police actions and violent police brutality, which of course not only existed at the time as well, but was practiced upon him. And for them to say that Martin Luther King would have been opposed to Black Lives Matter is hilarious and totally counterfactual and counter-historical. Just read what Martin Luther King wrote and said, and it'll be absolutely obvious. But again, I want to emphasize the strength, because he didn't come beseeching, right? And yes, he was nonviolent, but he had tremendous strength in that nonviolence.
Yeah, that's true.
He demanded action. And so again, if you study the history of it, when Lyndon Johnson was slow to act, and also when JFK was slow to act. He brought down pain upon their shoulders through tremendous civil disobedience that shook them to their core. And so, that's why I always, among the reasons why I emphasize nonviolence, because it is not, the right-wing ideology is, the only thing that is strong is war, violence, and conflict. That's not true. There is great strength in people like Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela. In fact, as of course King lived, it takes a lot more courage to take a punch than to throw a punch. And so it's an absolute pillar of strength.
And the amazing thing is, like, you shouldn't have to explain that to these people. Many of them have a book that is a guide, the ultimate guide to the universe and to life and to morals. And he specifically says, if somebody strikes you, turn the other cheek. It's right in there, right in the text. It ain't that long. It's shorter than 50 Shades, I think. Anyway, let's move on to a few more quotes, and I'm really stressing the poverty part because that was his focus, unfortunately, when he was taken. A second evil which plagues the modern world is that of poverty. Like a monstrous octopus, it projects its nagging, prehensile tentacles in lands and villages all over the world. Almost 2/3 of the peoples of the world go to bed hungry at night. They are undernourished, ill-housed, and shabbily clad. Many of them have no houses or beds to sleep in. Their only beds are the sidewalks of the cities and the dusty roads of the villages. Most of these poverty-stricken children of God have never seen a physician or a dentist. And even more direct, he said, the time has come for us to civilize ourselves by the total, direct, and immediate abolition of poverty. And sort of getting back to the structural thing, he also said, true compassion is more than flinging a coin, I think he said, the real quote, to a beggar. It comes to seeing that an edifice which produces beggars needs restructuring. So really, I mean, to some extent, questioning the core concepts of capitalism, the idea that we should not be measured by if we produce some billionaires, we should be measured by do we leave people in destitution as a necessary condition of our system of organizing the economy.
Okay, I want to also talk about how far we've come and how far we haven't come. So if you could set that up as a story.
So why don't we jump ahead to graphic 20? You're going to bring this up. We've got a couple of charts for you and a few other topics we can talk about. What you're going to see here is the historic average hourly earnings for black and white people per hour. There are a lot of ways that you can measure economic success and outcomes, obviously. But this is one of them. And you see there, going back to before the 80s, there has been something like parity between white and black men. Some ups, some down. You see that both did pretty well through the mid to late 90s with very, very slow rises over that and some backsliding. But the gap has never really gotten smaller. And you see that for women, the gap is smaller, but it is increasing over time as white women are doing slightly better as we get to the modern era.
So there's a couple of things here. One is about race, as you just pointed out there. Unfortunately, in some ways, it's worse now. Also about wealth overall. And we were talking about how on this 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King's assassination, he was about to lead the Poor People's Campaign right before he was killed. And the bottom half of American earners have stagnated since he passed. So unfortunately, no help for the poor people that he was trying to help as he was killed. While the top 1% of American earners have tripled their average income. So a light for the rest of us was snuffed out, and then we got no help. Where the top 1% kept rising and rising. So I want to show the next chart here from Vox as well. They did a good job putting this together. That's the black unemployment rate versus the white unemployment rate. So the black unemployment rate has continued to be higher, and so we have not closed the gap, and that is greatly frustrating. But I wanted to point out one other thing about this chart. If you notice, obviously they move in tandem. So when unemployment rises for whites, it also rises for blacks. When it dips for whites, it also dips for blacks. I point that out because the right wing will say that things like unemployment are a matter of moral character, and they will imply that the culture of African Americans is what creates unemployment, which of course is first of all, factually and morally preposterous. But as you look at this chart, it becomes exceedingly clear. No, it's clearly the economic patterns that are affecting the country. So the unemployment for whites and blacks move at the same exact time. It's not like when black unemployment spikes, all of a sudden they lost their moral character. And what a coincidence, so did white people at the same time. So
the white people were dragged down, obviously. Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, and at the same time, the fact that we have not been able to close the gap, and there have been many, many studies about if you take away all the other factors, including socioeconomic position and communities that you live in, et cetera, you still have a gap. And that is attributed to, unfortunately, bias, because there are no other factors left. Yeah. So for example, and you might have heard this one before, this is fairly famous, although a lot of people haven't heard it. So if you take a stereotypical white name and a stereotypical black name and you put it on resumes, the stereotypically white name gets called in for an interview 50% more. Just on name alone, the resume is identical otherwise. Study after study has shown that, and unfortunately, since Dr. King has passed away, it has not gotten better.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't have a ton of time, but to some extent, the average income almost hides how bad it is, because when you look at overall wealth, sort of not your year-by-year income, but what you've accumulated, it's far worse, far worse. Over the past several decades, it's gone up slightly for black and Hispanic households, but it has gone up fairly well for white households, and a lot of that has less to do with the economy day by day or year by year now, but it's the accrued gains of having houses, growing up in houses, being able to pass that on, using it to produce the money necessary for your kids to go to college. It's the wealth of past generations helps to produce more wealth for future generations, and if you held back the past generations, you are thereby holding back future ones as well. There's things like the persistence of school segregation, which has not improved that much over the past 30 or 40 years. In some areas, has actually gotten worse. The gap in college completion records between the races is still significant. You have the rise of mass incarceration, which is in some ways worse than it was back during that time, and a number of other metrics like this, things that we obviously should have done much better on. And you can look at the charts. We're not showing you anything that wasn't freely available on income or wealth or any of that. And you can look at that and you can see under what periods things have gotten better and where they've gotten worse, and you can draw some lessons from there. But overall, the lesson is that even when things are getting better, they're not getting better fast enough, and we haven't reached where we need to be.
So last two things on that, and one is the good news, which is high school completion rates for African Americans and whites have caught up, and so they're nearly the same now. Hey, look, so some improvement in some areas, but it also goes to show you, if you try, it turns out you can have success. We actually did try to increase the graduation rates in high schools for African Americans. And we did it, right? As a country, as a society. And in a lot of other areas, we never bothered to try. So remember, when African Americans were freed after the Civil War, they all started, not all, but most, overwhelming majority started with zero. They started with zero. So you have to make an effort, because history has cascaded consequences. So which leads to prisons. Why has it in a lot of these categories gotten worse, not better, since Martin Luther King passed away? The prison industrial complex. And so the war on drugs has imprisoned about 1.5 million African American men. And so that is a stunningly high number. And as some scholars have pointed out, there are now more African American men in prison. Of course, the population has gone up. Everybody understands that, but still it is a stunning fact. More African American males in prison now than there were slaves at the end of the Civil War. So male slaves. So we made those decisions. We decided to do the war on drugs and made marijuana illegal when we didn't need to. And in fact, Richard Nixon, his aide admitted it later in the 1990s, said, yeah, we did the war on drugs partly to imprison our political opponents, the liberal hippies and the blacks. They targeted blacks on purpose. These are not accidents. They made active decisions. We need to reverse those decisions so we could at least get on the path to justice. The moral arc of the universe might bend towards justice, but we got to help it bend. That's our job. So let's work together to make that happen. Okay, all right, we got to take a break here, guys. We've got great news out of Wisconsin for progressives when we come back. Now, you guys are gonna think, especially my early behind the scenes footage, like I already went and looked at the comments in the member section. You guys, oh, he's high, he's drunk. I swear to you, I'm not. Well, I just tell you if I am, right? And so I get goofy in the behind the scenes stuff.
What's the need for the butter with this pretzel? This is already super fattening it up. You don't need to put butter on this thing. Why'd they make me do it, Bitsy? Why'd they make me do it?
I'm just saying that this is known as the rear end guy. There's no way that every person he knows doesn't call him the rear end guy. I want you guys to see if you could see the lightning bugs. Whoa. Light them up. Light them up.
Is it true, Bitsy? I will now watch it later.
Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat. Imagine him, isn't it? Hey, Kiki Cat. Kiki Cat. All right, this is Kiki Cat signing out.
See anyone you recognize? Maybe something you're curious about? It's okay. No need to be ashamed. I think it's normal to mull over the macabre from time to time.
I mean, it just goes to show something about human nature. Why would we rather her had killed, 650 people in all these awful ways?
I mean, this is like your Leatherface chainsaw, like a boogeyman.
I think that a lot of these people were like, you know what's more powerful than the president? The person who kills the president.
There is a dark side to human nature that we all want to explore. So you stay up late, reading about what happened, how it happened.
They would have shown all these girls that were being held captive if they had played it on a video cassette player, but they said we didn't have a cassette player, so we didn't play the tapes.
They couldn't get one?
As soon as they went to go check out Ed Gein, well, it became pretty obvious that he had done it.
Yeah, he wasn't even sly.
Yeah, you walk into Ed Gein's house and you have walked into Ed Gein's house.
The media wants to find a boogeyman. At the end of the day, they want to find an answer that they can pin something on, even if it's not the most accurate or correct.
I absolutely think that the parents are hiding something.
Right.
Something's not adding up. Isn't adding up about their story. The Anchorage Police Department said that her lifestyle left a lot to be desired. Even though they interviewed Robert Hansen, they still were like, you're a slut.
Statistically, we've all met someone who's murdered someone.
It's murder with friends. Don't be scared. You're among friends.
Do you hear the thunder rolling across the land? That's Godoy the Gavel.
We go to the Chief Justice here, Jesus Godoy. Drop.
Breaking the back of injustice. He makes the call.
Can I jump in
No,
quick?
you can't.
He takes the shots.
I'm for it. We have to start somewhere already.
Don't try to pull the wool over this man's eyes, or you'll end up with a mouth full of wool and an ear full of reason.
You don't realize everything after. I actually wasn't that sure. Jesus inspired me.
Without this judge,
Jesus was persuasive.
our great discourses would be torn asunder.
I think she has a strong case. Strong case.
And someone sent me a message on Snapchat, but now I can't find it. What do I do? Go. Back on TYT, Cenk and John with you guys. The mathematician says Cenk joined Johnny I for hour one. Goody. By the way, okay, good. God bless. By the way, if the Justice Dems are the Avengers, does this make Trump Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet?
He wishes.
Okay.
It would be an Infinity Gauntlet, but it would be tiny. Little jewels.
Not very infinite. Yeah. All right, Kara Curley says, I have my first Wolfpack meeting this weekend. I love it. Fantastic. And with Brent Welder, we might have our first Wolfpack congressman. So, by the way, tytkansas.com. We're at like 45K there. For God's sake, let's get to 50K and finish that. Let's make sure that he could hire that grassroots field team. So tytkansas.com. Oh, look at that. That was quick work.
Remember,
nice.
he's one of us.
Yeah, he's a TYT member and a Wolfpack volunteer, and he's now currently beating the Republican incumbent by 7 points in the middle of Kansas. Go help him so he could win. You'll feel great. It'll be your victory when he wins. And Ishka Babol says there really isn't any difference between white, black, Latino, Asian families. If we fight together, we win. But the rich separate us with race, religion, so we don't get progress, and it works. Not on our watch, right? Okay, John, what's next?
Okay, electoral update for you. Last night, the Republicans were dealt yet another defeat, this time in Wisconsin, and this time in the state Supreme Court. We've covered a lot of elections, many of them shocking over the past year. Not a lot have been for state Supreme Court seats, but here we have Judge Rebecca Dallett beating Judge Michael Skrenak. Dallett is the Democrat in this case, and she won by like 11 points, pretty significant. And if I remember correctly, it's been something like 21 years since they won one of these elections. So that is certainly interesting, although not out of the norm for elections recently. So she's going to replace outgoing conservative Justice Michael Gableman, bringing the court's 5-2 conservative majority down to 4-3. So the conservatives will still have the lead for now, at the very least. Now, she had some help from outside of the state. Her endorsements came from former US Attorney General Eric Holder, former Vice President Joe Biden, and New Jersey Senator Cory Booker, amongst others.
Okay, wonderful development. First of all, we shouldn't be electing judges, just a random side note. And part of the reason why progressives hadn't won in Wisconsin for those kind of seats in a long time is because the courts decide a lot of cases that have to do with business interests. So what do business interests do? They pour in tons of money to make sure that their justices win, right? And they
justices,
right? They literally buy justice. So I mean, you could have elections for court positions as long as you don't have money in politics. But if you have private financing of elections, then people can just. It's an open auction for the judges as well as for the politicians. It's insanity. But now there is such great fervor in the land for progressive victories and against Donald Trump that she won by a comfortable margin. Earlier in Wisconsin, there was that election that Scott Walker had called a wake-up call for the Republican Party. That was a seat that Donald Trump had won by 17 points. It was a state Senate seat. And now a Democrat won it in special elections. In fact, in this same state, Democrats have been so successful in these special elections that Scott Walker tried to end special elections completely. And the courts were, and as you can tell, the courts are actually conservative still to this day. It was 5-2, in fact, at the time. They're like, yeah, that's still illegal. You can't do that. You can't just say there are no more elections, right?
But they took it in stride. I actually think this is Pennsylvania, but they got the same sort of thing, and they were like, okay, we're going to impeach all the justices.
That was
they didn't actually do it yet. They didn't actually do it, but they want to.
Not in Wisconsin, but they did. They are trying that in Pennsylvania. Now, that leads me to Scott Walker's tweets on this, which I found hilariously ironic. Let's go to graphic 9 here. He said, tonight's results show we are at risk of a blue wave in Wisconsin. Goddamn right you are. The far left, hilarious, is driven by anger and hatred, even funnier. We must counter it with optimism and organization. Back to hilarious. Let's share our positive story with voters and win in November. The left is driven by anger and hatred? Are we the ones accusing others of being criminals and rapists and making sure that we ban whole groups of people from coming because we hate them so much and we're fearful of them? Are we the ones that did that tiki torch rally in Charlottesville filled with anger and hatred? It's their ability to project what they're thinking onto their opponents is limitless. So, and then I love the idea of Republicans with optimism. Like, Oh my God, maybe immigrants will bring us good things.
Yeah.
Maybe races being together is wonderful. Maybe gay Americans should have the same rights as straight Americans. I'm so optimistic. The Republican Party.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And by the way, I love that it doesn't matter who you are. If you're running as a Democrat, they'll just call you the far left. She's described as a liberal. I have no idea what her positions are. I don't know that she's some sort of crazy, wide-eyed progressive. She's a liberal. And she's the far left. Be scared of the far left.
Well, it's not like there's any far right to be scared of, right?
No.
And it's not like they're in charge. So final tweet from Scott Walker is, big government special interests, again, hilarious, flooded Wisconsin with distorted facts and misinformation. Next, they'll target me.
Oh, that's what he's scared of.
Now we have why you're so animated. Anyway, and work to undo our bold reforms. Tax cuts, destroying workers' rights. Anyway, we need to keep moving Wisconsin forward, make sure a blue wave of outside special interest money doesn't take us backward. Okay, his complaints about outside special interest money flooding into elections is just about as the peak of irony. If you remember, during the huge conflict in Wisconsin and there was all the protests around the Capitol, and Scott Walker was besieged, which was a great thing. He won, fair is fair, right? But at the time, there was an activist who pretended to be one of the Koch brothers and called Governor Walker. And there was the tape, and he thought it was really one of the Koch brothers, who are special interest money
I forgot about that.
from outside the state. And Governor Walker was like, yes, sir, what can I do for you, sir? Absolutely, sir. What else would you need, sir? What happened? I thought you were getting special interest money from outside the state.
Well, those are really special interests. And by the way, can I just say one other thing? He said that they, oh God, where's the numbers? That they flooded it, and it's the big government special interests and all that. So Skrenak, the Republican, got $300,000 from the Republican Party of Wisconsin, which is, I'm being honest, the most a political party has ever spent on a Supreme Court candidate in state history. So it flooded from outside. We have a national Republican Party flooding it with historic levels of money. But they're not special interests. They're everyday commonplace interests.
Yeah, and what Walker's in a panic over is that they can't buy the elections anymore. And they were buying almost every election in Wisconsin, and all of a sudden it stopped working. That's why he's doing red flags. I don't know what to do. The donor money's not working. Help. Can't wait. So what's the other story?
Oh, the ad?
Real quick, let's do that.
Okay. Okay. If you still need a demonstration of how content-free and Trump worship-focused the Republican Party has become over the past year or so, take a look at this ad. It's the latest ad from a Republican Senate primary candidate.
I'm Todd Rokita, and here's the truth. We're not going to beat Joe Donnelly with a rhino. Mike Braun, he's a lifelong Democrat. He voted for Obama or Hillary. Wow. And Luke Messer, he plotted with the Never Trumpers to steal the nomination from President Trump. You gotta be kidding me. I'm Todd Rokita, and I'll proudly stand with our president and Mike Pence to drain the swamp. I'm Todd Rokita, and I approve this message.
Okay, I love that. So let me list all the reasons why I love that. Yeah, exactly. When he went back and pulled the MAGA hat out of his ass. That was definitely the top moment for me.
Yeah.
I know sometimes I talk about how they're gonna have brown shirts soon.
Oh God, I don't want the brown hats.
No, you don't want the brown hats. Anyway, he voted for Hillary or Obama. Which one? That was weird. So I don't know what he means by that. So look, now I will do an ironic defense of the guy. So I get him saying, hey, look, I'm the real Republican. That's fair. Like within the Democratic Party, there's a conversation about who are the real progressives and who are the fake progressives, right? So now the part that John is right about and why we do this story is, but in the Republican Party, first of all, they all agree on all the positions. Even senators who are so-called opposed to Donald Trump, like Jeff Flake and Bob Corker, who's spoken out against Trump, vote with him 95% of the time or higher. So there is no actual policy differences in the Republican Party. And so for him to be saying like, I'm the MAGA dude. Well, yeah, they've let go of policy issues, but partly because, and I guess this is another ironic defense of him in a roundabout way, they don't know what Trump's policy positions are gonna be. So if you make an ad saying, yeah, I'm with Trump on trade, he might switch his position tomorrow.
Before the ad's even out.
That's right. And then you're like, oh no. And then your opponent's gonna do an ad going, see, he's not with Trump.
I don't want to be on a little board that gets spun. Yeah, and look, I get that he needs to do this. That is probably the most effective ad that he can run right now. But that is sad, and I'm not just criticizing him, I'm criticizing the people above him, Trump, for doing this to a party he supposedly cares for, and I'm criticizing the people that are gonna vote based on he says, I'm the real Republican. The only demonstration is that he owns a hat. I could buy a hat. Do I get to be the Republican candidate for Senate there? He didn't list a single policy distinction between him and the Democrats, not even him and the Republicans. We don't know anything about him other than that he owns a hat there. And you talked about a couple of the little subtle things that you liked in it. My favorite was, he says, I'm gonna tell you the truth. And it says the truth, but it has a question mark. Like the person making the ad isn't really sure that he's going to.
I didn't notice that, that's awesome.
Can we play just the very beginning? It's like the first 7 seconds or something. How did that get through?
Yeah, no, that's a question mark.
You can cut.
Okay, that's awesome.
Why is there a question mark?
I'm gonna tell you the truth. Maybe. And he voted for Hillary or Obama.
Yeah, and so I wanna.
And this hat might or might not be in my ass.
So Bob Corker, who you referenced, mentioned this tribalism, basically, that it's all about, I'm part of the leader. I follow the leader and I follow him better than you, and I'll give him the best bananas and all that. Bob Corker said, it's more than strong, it's tribal in nature. People who tell me who are out on the trail say, look, people don't ask about issues anymore. They don't care about issues. They want to know if you're with Trump or not. And that is true. And by the way, there are people like that all over the place. I mean, the Republicans that's all that. I think amongst progressives, it's a much smaller thing. But be on the lookout for it, because in the same way that we follow sports teams, regardless, every player could change, but we still love the same team or whatever. Or a school that we went to that's nothing like what we used to, we still love it. We get attached to these things. And with politics, it's not sports, it's important, so don't do that. But to just drive home the content-free thing, that was the ad. No policies, no whatsoever. They send out a press release. Here is a tweet, including the press release. This is their messaging. On the right, today, Hoosiers for Rokita released its latest TV ad, MAGA, featuring Todd Rokita wearing a Make America Great Again hat and highlighting why a lifelong Democrat like Braun or never Trumper like Messer can't defeat Joe Donnelly. So in their press release, they stress, hey, he's wearing the hat. That was the qualification that they provided. That's his campaign.
It's almost literally saying, don't worry, I will bow my head to the authoritarian leader. And it's sad to be a conservative because, look, here's a huge difference. And a lot of pundits on TV will make really shallow arguments. Well, don't Democrats also like specific leaders? But look at the difference between Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump as an example. So Bernie Sanders, why do progressives like him? Because he hasn't changed his positions in 40 years, so we know we can trust him. It's not because we love the way he combs his hair. Right?
I do like that though.
Right, it's not because he hates the same people we hate. It's not because he likes to bully other people. It's not artificial, it is based on his policy positions.
Yes.
If he changed his policy positions, I guarantee you he would lose his support. Right? Trump, on the other hand, changes his policy positions almost every day. Oh, no, the DACA kids are gonna stay, no problem. I guarantee you they're gonna stay. DACA, I'm taking it away, it's outrageous, it's outrageous. Oh, the Democrats took DACA away. It makes no sense. But as long as you wear that stupid hat, they're like, yes, dear leader, yes, whatever you want. Even his own supporters are in favor of the Dreamer kids being able to stay, but he's against it, and he's the one who took it away in the legislation. They're like, but do you have the hat on or don't you have the hat on? Oh, you got the hat on? You got the red hat and the brown shirt? I'm in.
This was the only thing stopping it from Trumpism from being a religion, was that they didn't have their own fancy hat. And now, like every religion, they have their hat. And if you don't wear it, you're an immoral person.
There you go.
What is he gonna do when the other guys get hats?
Maybe that's what we should do for Bernie, hide his bald spot too. Get him a TYT hat. All right, guys, we gotta go. Thank you, John. Anna's gonna come back. We found out who the YouTube shooter is and what her motivations were. So that is a very, very interesting story. And we'll do that a lot more when we return.
My name is Allison Hartson. I am a national director with Wolfpack.
Pop on those 3D glasses, guys, because it's about to get crazy.
The goal of Wolfpack is to get an amendment to the US Constitution that will allow us to have free and fair elections.
It's not the only issue, but it's the first issue, and that's money in politics.
The goal of Wolfpack is to get a representative democracy back in this country.
The corruption issue affects every other issue. You name it. You can go down the list: education, the environment, the military, the economy.
People at the top, they're making the most money, are the ones that are dictating all of the rules. That is the antithesis of a democracy.
Wolfpack has the most intelligent, plausible way to get money out of politics.
We have the logical plan.
So what we're trying to do is to use the power that our forefathers gave us in the US Constitution through Article 5.
Article 5 is a specific procedure set up in the Constitution to propose amendments to it.
You have to work state by state. And you need 34 states to make that happen.
Vermont, California, Illinois, New Jersey, and Rhode Island, we've passed in those states so far.
One of the hardest parts of my job is that I have to follow her. Give me a break. My name is Mike Manetta. I am a national director with Wolfpack.
We have decided to move Wolfpack from defense to offense.
We travel from state to state constantly. This year, she was gone from January 2nd until, I think, May, without ever going home once. So that's dedication.
I get frustrated and want to quit every other week. No, I'm kidding. Kind of. There are definitely really tough moments, but the most amazing thing about it all is that we get through it together and we get stronger because of it, and we just keep each other going. Like Mike and I, when I'm down, he like pushes me forward, and when he's down, I push him forward, and we keep on going and work like a team like that. And that's what we tell our state teams, and that's why they need each other as well, because it takes a lot of tenacity and a lot of perseverance and resiliency to be able to get legislation passed, period, let alone to fix corruption in the most powerful country in the world. When we passed in California, that was my first win that I got to personally enjoy. That was amazing. I think I was hooked, officially hooked at that point.
I was in Rhode Island when we passed. I was probably there every single day that week, just standing outside, holding up signs, waiting for legislators. 2 years of really, really hard work condensed into this one amazing moment of victory.
To have those moments, it literally makes everything that we do so much more rewarding.
If people are truly sick and tired of sitting by and watching what's happening to this country, and if people are truly sick and tired of just talking about it and tweeting about it and liking it and sharing it on Facebook, it's time to take action and get out on the streets and get involved and learn how to get involved even if you don't know how to.
You cannot just complain from the sidelines in this day and age. There is too much going on.
We need to do this now. There is no time to waste. Anybody who wants to get involved, is curious, is a little scared, but would like to know how to possibly start learning how to make this happen, should go to wolf-pac.com, wolf-pac.com, and sign up to volunteer. No experience necessary.
The facts are on our side. The history is on our side. The public opinion is on our side, both on the policy and the procedure. We're going to find more success, and we will get this amendment.
There's no other option for me.
Hi, guys.
Hey. Okay, yeah, we were having a conversation when we came back from the break. Cenk and Anna with you guys. Just 2 quick tweets for you. Gabby writes in, you know how I know Todd Rokita is a fascist? He doesn't state any position. All he did was put on a badge, in this case a red hat. In the 1930s, it had been a red armband. All this has happened before, and all of it is happening again.
I mean, he's a man of many hats, who wears many hats.
Yeah, well.
That ad was hilarious.
Agreed, hilarious. Rory Dennis, also about that ad, says Ben Mankiewicz often speaks of how his father could identify an anti-Semite by the hat they wear. I see what he means now. Good tweet, Rory. Okay, you know what? Ironically, you get a hat. ShopTYT.com. You can pick a shirt, a hat, anything you like, and it can have any message you like. Okay, so thanks for noting that Ben's dad used to say that. That is an excellent point in this context. Anna, what is next?
All right, we have some more details regarding the shooting that took place at YouTube in San Bruno. So let's fill you guys in on that. Police have identified the YouTube shooter. This was the woman who opened fire at the YouTube campus in San Bruno, California. And other than the shooter herself, luckily no fatalities were reported. 3 individuals were reported to have injuries and they are still being treated at the hospital. But here's what we know about the woman who opened fire. Her name is Nasim Najafi Agdam, and she's from San Diego. She allegedly opened fire at the tech giant's main campus in San Bruno, wounding 3 people before turning the gun on herself. So that has officially been confirmed. The gunshot wound was a self-inflicted wound. Apparently, she used a pistol in the shooting, and so far there's no indication that she obtained it illegally. In fact, it has been confirmed that she purchased the gun legally, or at least had the gun legally. Now, she visited a gun range hours before she showed up at YouTube's California campus. Another interesting component to this story was that her family had reported her missing. They were concerned about her, and then authorities had found her near the YouTube campus, essentially, in her car. And when the authorities had alerted her parents that she had been found and they let them know where her location was, they said that they were concerned because she was angry at YouTube and she was holding a grudge against YouTube over her videos being demonetized. Okay, so let's give you some more details on that. Now, Mountain View officers had found her sleeping in her car early Tuesday, hours before the shooting, and described that she did not pose a threat, which is why they didn't take her in custody, they let her go. Now, here is what the San Bruno police chief says. We have a pretty good idea, but we'd like to get some more information before we can definitely say exactly what that motive was. But obviously, she was upset with some of the practices or policies that the company had employed. Now, Good Morning America did a piece on this morning, and it kind of gives you some more insight into that. But before we toss that video, Cenk, I wanted to give you a chance to chime in.
Yeah, so sometimes they'll say things like as if they're surprising. It turns out her gun was legal. Yeah, of course, it's the easiest thing in the world to buy a legal gun. So I never find it interesting whether the gun is legal or illegal. We're in a sea of guns. All you have to do is just pick one up. There's 250 million guns. By the time we do this video, there's probably 260 million guns in the country. And then they say like, oh, she went to a gun range. Yeah, people go to gun ranges all the time. If you think that that's a significant issue, that there's all these guns and people are shooting, getting ready to shoot people, I agree with you, that's a massive issue. But if you want to do something about it, the gun rights people will flip out and they'll say, oh, if they caught her, and by the way, the cops did talk to her, as Anna pointed out, beforehand. And the one thing that was alarming here was her own family saying, watch out, she might be dangerous. We're worried about what she might do, including to herself, right? But when you go to stop her, I got a legal gun. I'm going to a gun range. So what? What are you going to do about it? I don't know that the cops knew that she had gone to the gun range at that point. But she could have just told them. It wouldn't have made any difference. She could just scream, I have Second Amendment rights. And then everybody would flank to defend her. And so just don't pretend to be outraged after the fact.
So let's take a look at the video, and it'll also give you a sense of what type of content she was putting up on YouTube. Take a look.
Law enforcement officials say this is the woman, 38-year-old Nasim Agdam, who stormed into an employee patio at YouTube headquarters in San Bruno, California, shooting 3 employees before turning the gun on herself.
It was one after another, boom, 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 boom.
Her family says the prolific YouTube user,
"My name is Nasim Sabs,"
hated the company, claiming it was censoring her content and not paying her for the videos she posted on the platform.
"I'm being discriminated and filtered on YouTube."
She had a YouTube channel which
sensual.
posted ab
Why
workout
did that?
videos,
Because-
and many of them in Farsi. Her brother says her family reported her missing over the weekend and claims they told police about her deep-seated resentment towards YouTube.
And she had a problem with YouTube, so we called that cop again and told him that there's a reason she went all the way from San Diego to that.
So in one of her videos, she was quoted as saying, "There is no free speech in real world, and you will be suppressed for telling the truth that is not supported by the system. Videos of targeted users are filtered and merely relegated so that people can hardly see their video." So she was pretty clear about her frustration toward YouTube. A lot of content creators have felt frustration toward YouTube fairly recently because of videos getting demonetized. And a huge reason behind that has to do with the fact that advertisers started to get incredibly uncomfortable with some of the content that their advertisements were appearing on. So there were some specific cases that made news involving content creators who said things that were, used the N-word or used language that the advertisers didn't like. And so they threatened to pull all their ads from YouTube in general, and then YouTube wanted to appease them and essentially did change their policies using an algorithm that would demonetize certain videos that the advertisers didn't like. And this impacted everyone across the ideological spectrum. Doesn't matter if you're conservative, doesn't matter if you're progressive. Everyone, every channel experienced their content getting demonetized because of the algorithm. Think about the billions of hours worth of YouTube content that gets uploaded on a regular basis. They don't have the manpower to watch all that content, so they rely on that algorithm. And admittedly, that algorithm is a bit flawed. And so people have been frustrated. She seems to be one of those individuals.
And they made a lot of progress in fixing that algorithm as well. So look, we got hit pretty hard by the demonetization as well. And there is great irony that we were all punished, whether we're in politics or not in politics, or if we're good guys or bad guys, for the insane rantings of, generally speaking, right-wing guys who said racist things and things filled with bigotry, etc. And advertisers are like, I don't want to have my product in front of those videos because it's going to turn off a lot of my customers, and I don't want to turn off my customers. So then we all got demonetized. And then the right wing, of course, as always, cried the hardest, even though it hit us all and it was their fault, right? But nonetheless, they went and did all that, and then they got people all riled up like this lady. But look, this woman, you think you would have been on air anywhere without YouTube? Do you think your ab videos and your dolphin videos were gonna make it onto ABC? So look, I'll admit my bias. I've been a fan of YouTube for a long, long time, and we were the first partner for YouTube. But my bias is born out of reality, out of facts, because they allow for independent voices, and independent voices that the establishment media shuts out. So to then complain that you're not giving me enough money, look, there's legitimate ways to say, hey, how can we fix this together?
Right.
And then there's what she did, which is madness and insanity and terrorize people. And she claims to be, she was apparently an extreme vegan. I'll grant you that she was extreme. And she says that she was for, and here's a direct quote, "For me, animal rights equals human rights." Well, how about the rights of the humans that you try to murder?
Exactly, exactly. And to your point regarding YouTube and demonetization, so there are a lot of conversations about how YouTube is censoring people. So first off, advertisers not wanting to spend money on your videos because they're afraid of the content in your videos and afraid of it being too controversial is not the same as censorship. If YouTube was pulling your video down, literally not letting you post videos because of your ideas or your beliefs, then you have a case. Absolutely, that's censorship. But they're not.
By the way, just let me be clear, it's not government censorship, as we've discussed many times before.
And exactly. It's not a constitutional violation. It is a private company. They're able to do what they want. They're not the government, okay? So thank you for clarifying that. But with that said, YouTube doesn't pull the videos down. It gets demonetized based on their algorithm, which again, needed improvement. You say that there's been some improvement, but I think that there's still more. I think YouTube can improve transparency, explain in better detail why the videos got demonetized. But look, my point is, what we need to address more than anything is the fear of these advertisers, because they do get scared very easily. And I think what they need to open themselves up to is content other than the squeaky clean television stuff that they've been so comfortable with.
Which is, by the way, not squeaky clean.
Right.
So, last thing on that, if you're gonna get angry, first of all, please do it in a productive way, right? And so obviously this is the most extreme example, but there's a lot of people who are getting angry in unproductive ways. But and have some sense as to who you're directing it at. And in terms of the advertisers, it's not YouTube. It is clearly the advertisers. Anna's absolutely right about that. But even in terms of those, the productive way to handle it, I think, is, wait a minute, guys, let's talk about the hypocrisy here as you advertise on television on two different fronts. One, in general, I mean, we did the story about The Bachelor the other day. I mean, that is
that's a great point.
Emotional pornography at its worst. You have a woman who's broken down and just crying, and they will not take the camera off of her. It's just gross, but advertisers flock to it. They're like, well, that kind of gross, disgusting stuff on air is wonderful, right? And then you watch any of the shows, including like things like 2.5 Men that was, #1 for however many decades, right? They are constantly making jokes about prostitutes and sex. If you did that on YouTube, they're like, whoa, I don't know if that's safe, right?
Right.
But there's gigantic hypocrisy along those lines.
And let me be clear about, look, when Jake is saying that they would see it on YouTube and they'd be like, no, we don't know if that's safe. It's not that they're actually watching that content and making a decision based on that content. Because so much content gets uploaded onto YouTube, again, they rely on an algorithm. So, that demonetization gets triggered by certain tags and certain wording in the video. But it's not one person who's sitting there and thinking, this is too conservative for me. Demonetized, it doesn't work that way. Or this is too progressive for me, or this is too sex oriented for me. It just doesn't work that way. And by the way, I mean, look, yes, we've been hit and we will continue to get hit as we cover content that triggers, the demonetization. And we have to have conversations about that on a regular basis. And guess what? We still do stories that we know will not be monetized because at least we have the ability to get the word out about those stories. And that's why I respect YouTube. It sucks, this demonetization thing sucks, but I would rather not get paid for that video and still have the ability to use my platform to draw attention to that story. So that's just my take. I understand if people disagree with it.
And final note on that is, look, everyone has a bias. And what the mainstream media is doing now is taking advantage of situations like this, whether it's Cambridge Analytica scandal at Facebook or it's the, an ad appearing in front of some racist video on YouTube, to say, nope, now the only news that is acceptable is CNN, Washington Post, etc. Now, are they clean? They have no bias at all? They just drop down from heaven and earth onto earth and they only deliver you the truth? Look, I respect those guys. I tell you, like all the conspiracy theories about how they get together in a room and make up stories is preposterous, etc. But they do have a bias, and that is in favor of the status quo because they are run by multi-billion-dollar corporations and they don't want change. They're on top. Of course they don't want change. And that oozes into all of their content. So let's not pretend that they don't have a bias. They do. So if I was an advertiser, I would want to get, sure, I mean, CNN has a bias, but I'd put my product on there. And then I would also put it on a left wing perspective, and I'd put it on a right wing perspective. I get it if an advertiser doesn't want to offend huge swaths of their customers by calling them the N-word or alienating 1.6 billion Muslims in the world because they'd like to sell Coke and Nike to them. I understand that, but at the same time, people that are on the left and the right are the majority of the country. So if you're afraid to run your ad to people who have those positions, then you wind up running it to no one, which is kind of what's happening on television. All the young people have left,
right,
and they're still trying to force their ads into there because it's considered acceptable, whether it actually is or not.
We got to take a break, but when we come back, we will give you the NRA's reaction to the shooting at YouTube.
T-minus 1 minute till landing. TYT broadcast controllers, listen up. Give me a go, no go for landing. Sound?
Audio is hovering at minus 12 decibels. We're go.
Streaming?
We're go.
Camera crew?
We're go.
Mission control?
We're go.
Snacks?
We're good.
Iguana? Sir, we are go for landing. Okay, everybody. I want this to go off without a hitch.
Sir, I've been looking over this joke for the past hour, and with the bandit firing now weeks old and waning in
English, Johnson, English. What are you trying to tell me?
This joke isn't going to land, sir.
Okay, everyone. Forget the old plan. From this moment on, we're improvising a new joke.
So this is where the show started, and this is where it was supposed to end. Now the joke was supposed to land here, but that's not gonna happen, obviously. So we need to come up with a new joke. Maybe here?
The hits are dropping, streams are failing, retweets are stopping.
40 seconds.
All right, team. We gotta find a way to make this fit into a joke about this that will appeal to them.
30 seconds.
A Trump joke's our safest option. Trying to land a Trump joke after this week's events is a suicide mission.
We are officially out of time. We need to act now.
Sir, I think our best course of action is to let Jink try to land a dad joke.
That's the deal?
That's the deal.
All right, everyone, to their stations.
Led by Germany, Italy, and some of the creditor nations like Netherlands and Finland.
Cameras, position.
Now,
social media team. Brace front follows. 10 seconds. As for the rest of us, all any of us can do now is wait and hope.
This is gonna be the worst disaster TYT has ever experienced.
With all due respect, sir, I think this will be the finest hour 2 yet.
We're ready to deal with the consequences. Giving mood. Angela Merkel's government seems to have signaled from now.
Come on, Jink.
Everyone, it's been a pleasure streaming with you.
Greek Prime Minister immediately picked up the phone to Putin and said, "You Putin any money in?" Okay, anyway.
TYT crew, the joke has landed.
All right, so right now I'm walking by Tim Robbins. I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. Just going to walk by, see if he notices me, see if he recognizes me.
Student activism, community organizing.
It's cool, like Tim, he's acting like he doesn't or see me, like he doesn't notice me. It's all right. It's cool. A lot of people are recognizing me. It's okay if Tim Robbins plays it cool. He is playing it cool. I'm going to walk this way. See, I'll give him a chance to recognize. Let's see if he notices me. Ready? Maybe he didn't notice me because, my head was turned. It's probably because my head was turned. You think it was because my head was turned? I think it was because my head was turned.
back on Young Turks. Members of the day are Michael Medby and Jeanette Tavalli. I swear to you guys that today we will finally talk about whether I beat the kids in the swimming and the sprint challenge.
It's actually kind of surprising that you keep bringing this up. Like I thought maybe since we haven't gotten to it in the last 2 post games that you realize that it's kind of embarrassing to talk about racing children in a swimming competition.
No. I mean,
but no, you really want to talk about it.
No, but I do, because I mean, if I beat a 14-year-old in a sprint and a 14-year-old girl in a swimming race, that kind of means I'm awesome. So find out if I'm awesome at tytnetwork.com/join.
You don't want to miss it.
Okay. So now, real quick, for a more perfect America says, personally, I favor Tom Morello and his "Make America Rage Again" hat. That's funny. And also he wrote in, I'll read it because it's 2 good tweets. So we're killing people over demonetization now. Really, America? Seriously? And as Edwin, our stage manager, tweeted earlier today, demonetization does not equal censorship. You do not have a right to have revenue from YouTube. That is not a constitutional right. Okay, and we get revenue from YouTube. Believe me, that would be awesome.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, can we call for a convention?
An amendment? Yeah.
An amendment? Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be pretty fantastic.
Yeah. u-pack.com. All right, anyway, what's next?
Okay. The NRA has responded to the shooting that took place at the YouTube campus in San Bruno, California, and they have essentially came up with all sorts of talking points and excuses in order to prevent any real conversation about guns in America. Now, the shooter opened fire and did not luckily kill anyone. 3 people were injured, and then she killed herself with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Now, with that said, though, the NRA had an interesting take initially. Now, the first thing that they wanted to talk about was YouTube inviting hatred among themselves or toward themselves because of how they censor people. So Chuck Holton said the following: YouTube making these changes where they're going from being a platform for videos to being a publisher of videos, meaning that they are starting to censor content here and there, whatever, actually opens them up to liability, and it opens them up to a lot of hatred from people around the world. Bottom line is, as it turns out, the shooter was just pretty downright crazy, even by California standards, and that's saying something.
Oh, that's great. Insult people that live in California. By the way, everyone who was shot lived in California. So, but what do you care? I mean, haha, we'll make fun of liberal California as some of them were just shot and all of them were terrified. So, but if you're trying to sell guns, what are you gonna do? I mean, is there any moral center to these folks? And you're gonna turn around and blame YouTube
after they've been victimized. But that's what the NRA does. I mean, they blame the Parkland students and essentially mock them and said all sorts of terrible things about them because they wanted gun control after seeing their friends and their teachers get gunned down. What makes you think that they wouldn't continue victimizing the victims in this case?
It's hubris. They think we own all your politicians. They spent $50 million in the last campaign buying politicians, including Donald Trump. Like, you're not gonna get anything you want. So we'll just rub your face in it. You get gunned down, well, we'll blame it on you. We'll say it was your fault and you had it coming.
So they blamed YouTube in that way. And by the way, they had been pushing this narrative of YouTube's bad, they're censoring people for a while now. YouTube had basically passed a new policy regarding content that would promote the sale of gun and ammunition. Now, previously they wouldn't ban those types of videos, but after the shooting in Parkland, Florida, they had a policy saying we're not gonna allow people to promote the sale of guns. You can still have content on YouTube where you talk about guns. If you wanna talk about gun safety, that's totally fine. If you wanna show the features of a gun that you purchase, that's fine. But we are not gonna allow people to use YouTube as an advertising mechanism to sell guns. Well, of course, that has been completely misconstrued by the NRA, and they keep pushing this narrative that all gun content has been banned on YouTube. That is not the case. Now, here is an example of a video from NRA TV in late March. This was obviously before the shooting. Take a look.
It is no secret the left has an agenda that revolves around censoring speech they don't agree with. YouTube is no different. Last week, townhall.com reported YouTube censoring of firearm safety training videos, banning channels that are run by gun companies, instructors, or even just gun enthusiasts. The NRA's Institute for Legislative Action's executive director, Chris Cox, responded to YouTube censorship saying this, quote, YouTube is now in the business of political posturing and censorship. Millions of Americans watch YouTube videos every day to learn more about the safe and responsible use of firearms. And those videos show law-abiding gun owners participating in lawful behavior. By banning this content, YouTube is engaging in politically motivated censorship and alienating the millions of people who turn to their website for education and training. I will tell you that Chris Cox is spot on.
So let's actually hear from YouTube and from the New York Times. New York Times reported on this on March 22nd. It would ban videos that promote either the construction or sale of firearms and their accessories. YouTube's quote on this very issue was, while we've long prohibited the sale of firearms, we've recently notified creators of updates where we will be making content promoting the sale or manufacture of firearms and their accessories, specifically items like ammunition, Gatling triggers, and drop-in auto sears. They're banning it, basically, that type of content. And so they're misrepresenting what's actually happening, stroking, anger, tension, fear, all of that stuff.
So, okay, let's go over simple things that the NRA actually knows, but they're doing propaganda. YouTube is a private company, they could do it, or actually part of Google and hence a public company, but they could do anything they want. They're not the government, they're not banning your ability to buy guns. And so if they say, hey, look, I don't want this particular product that kills people, whether it's a cigarette, whether it's a gun, or whatever it might be, to have these videos on my outlet. Number one, they have all the right in the world to do that. Okay, then don't use YouTube. Problem solved. So why are you still crying? I guess you think YouTube is so awesome that if you're not on YouTube, you're devastated. Okay, that's a nice ad for YouTube. Number two, how come you don't expect the same of ABC? What a weird standard, right? ABC won't let me run propaganda for gun manufacturers. Yeah, that's right, they won't, okay? And neither will YouTube. Why is YouTube obligated to run your propaganda? Speaking of propaganda, what's NRA TV?
Exactly. By the way, does ABC ban that kind of content?
So, I mean, ABC gets to make decisions about what programs they have on air, right?
Yes.
By definition, they have the ones that they want, and the ones they don't want are not on. But nobody goes around going, ABC censored me because they didn't put my show on, right? Yeah. So it's weird, different rules for YouTube. And finally, NRA TV, if you don't know, is paid for through the donations that gun manufacturers, weapons manufacturers give to the NRA. So it is literally meant as like a kind of a QVC in a sense of gun manufacturers to subtly and oftentimes not subtly push more guns into the market so that you will buy them and they will make more money.
So to your point on that, they have already used this shooting at the YouTube campus to push for more gun sales. And I'll give you an example. Here's the type of fear mongering that the NRA used in their commentary following the shooting. So Greg Stinchfield said, how did the guy or the gal get inside and where was the weakness? Always there's a weakness that was exploited. Where was the weakness and can it be fixed? Sometimes evil manages to slip through. Those cases are rare. So they're blaming YouTube for not having the proper security measures in place to prevent the shooting or the shooter to gain access into the building. Access control is not security. It can contribute to security, but it is not security. Gun control is not security. The only thing that is security is that cordon of law enforcement that is now parked around YouTube headquarters. And then finally, it's not just Silicon Valley, it's every company across America, even say it's just a domestic dispute case. Some estranged lover wants to kill their lover. This could happen to anyone. You don't know what your cube mate is going through. You could get caught in the middle of things in any time. So that fear mongering, I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous. And there's always criticism from extreme gun advocates regarding politicizing a mass shooting or a shooting situation. I mean, what do you think they're doing here? They're politicizing it and exploiting it to sell more guns, to sow fear in communities and convince you, oh, no, what you need to do is give up all of your privacy rights, okay? And go to work where you have to walk through metal detectors and have clear backpacks and purses, and then make sure you arm yourself as well.
Yeah, the idea is, well, anybody can shoot you at any time. Why? Because of you guys. So they say, oh, guns don't kill people, people kill people. That is the dumbest statement in the history of the world. Yes, if you have an ex-lover spat, as the one he alluded to, the person could kill you, your wife or your girlfriend could kill you with her bare hands. She could kill you with a rope or a knife, but it's a lot harder. That's why countries that have gun control have very little deaths, like Japan has only 13 deaths. We, on the other hand, have over 30,000 deaths by gun. Okay, 13 deaths by gun, obviously, in Japan. That's why they have very little mass shootings, because they don't have the guns to do mass shootings with. It's not that we have a crazier population. It's that we arm our entire population, including the people like the deranged person that did that attack on YouTube. And what does the gun manufacturers say? Oh, the answer isn't to take away their guns so they can murder you. The answer is you murder them first with the gun that I sold you. Unsurprising that that would be your answer if you make money selling guns. But for the rest of us, we should go back to sanity.
One more break. When we come back, an update on the teacher protests in Oklahoma.
No hate on Joe Kennedy, he's just a standard politician, speaking in standard cadence. He's a young guy, he's trying to learn the ropes, yada yada. But more important than him sounding fake and Bernie Sanders sounding real is the substance. So he gave Kennedy gave the stories of the family in Pittsburgh and the this and that, and Bernie jumped right into the numbers. And he's like, look, here's the context. Yes, unemployment is down, but the context of that is how much unemployment has fallen under Obama. And in fact, we've added the fewest jobs since 2010. That's super important context. And other politicians might think, oh, that'll bore the audience. No, the audience loves that. Look, we want to know that.
They love it because they're living it, right? So one of the things that I realized under Obama is, yes, the economy overall did improve, but since wages didn't improve much, a lot of Americans were bitter and angry toward him and Democrats, right? Which is what kind of paved the way for, unfortunately, someone like Trump. And what Bernie's doing, at least in the beginning of his speech, is saying, yeah, okay, sure, we'll give him that. The unemployment rate is the lowest it's been in a long time, but let's talk about wages. That's something that a lot of people care about, and I think that it's a miscalculation by other politicians to think that it's going to bore people to get into the numbers.
He touched all the important things. He talked about,
covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, he said, why didn't he talk about climate change, something massively important to the world?
Criminal justice reform.
And Citizens United, what happened? I thought you were going to drain the swamp. All of a sudden, not a word about Citizens United or getting money out of politics or the corruption in Washington. College for all the things that Trump didn't talk about. And we've got it now. I want to show you video 13. We literally asked for this before Bernie's speech began, and the guy always delivers. Here, let's take a look at video 13 here.
We need to seriously address the issue of immigration, but that does not mean dividing families and reducing legal immigration by 25 to 50%. It surely does not mean forcing the taxpayers of our country to spend $25 billion on a wall that candidate Trump promised us that Mexico would pay for.
The high school jock who was so mean to you, hated you, picked on you on Instagram. Hey, I think you're really sexy. I've always thought you were sexy.
No way.
Totally.
That happened to you?
Yes, and here's the thing that made me mad about that. it was like, bro, we could have been super tight. You know, like we could have been like really tight. But but here's the thing though too. Now you're not sexy.
Why?
Because I feel like when you're an ugly duckling in high, like I was kind of like ugly in high school, and then you blossom into like this hot, sexy chocolate thing that I am now. Just kidding. And you're just like, nah, I'm good. But see, gaydar doesn't develop. It's like mutant powers. It develops as you get older and becomes more powerful. Now that I'm in my 30s, my gaydar is like bam. But back in like 98, 99, like you're gay, really? Like you just didn't know because you're still trying to figure yourself out.
I got a bunch of things to go through. No Republican would have ever voted for Bernie. He would have done worse than Hillary Clinton.
They're so miserable. All right, I'm gonna stop myself before I say things that are offensive.
If I ran for office, and that would be a trippy day, right? I'd break even more rules than Trump. If I had all the money in the world, I would enjoy that.
We have a great show for you. Steve's answer is C. Dave's is A. And the correct answer is, of course, B. You guys are the worst. Here's the story, and it's not funny. Steve is over too.
The Democratic Party just sucks right now. It just sucks because it doesn't know what it stands for.
We should probably wrap it up.
Don't miss Rebel headquarters tonight because here comes Rick Trevino. In the Texas primary coverage, we talked about him a lot. He's on now. He made the runoffs. I love these Texas candidates. Last night we had, I can't stop talking about her, mighty Mary Wilson from the 21st district and now Trevino from the 23rd. If you care about progressive victories, you'll love Rebel headquarters. That's next. And then obviously we got the post game after that. tytnetwork.com/join. Okay, what's next, Anna?
Teachers in Oklahoma continue to protest for not only higher pay for themselves and for support staff in the schools, but also to get more funding for their students and for the districts throughout the state. Now, the governor of Oklahoma seems like she's getting a little irritated with these protests, and we have a video interview that she did to prove it. But first, let me give you some details on some of the legislative wins that the teachers have gotten so far and how they're not satisfied with these legislative wins. They want more funding for the schools. On Tuesday, the governor of Oklahoma, Mary Fallin, signed a bill giving teachers support staff, like teachers' aides and janitors, a $1,250 raise. Last week, she signed a measure that gave teachers a $6,000 pay raise, but only added an additional $50 million to school funding. Teachers were asking for $200 million more. Now, keep in mind that school funding has been cut by 28% since 2008. And so what the teachers are asking for is not unreasonable, especially considering some of the evidence that they've shown us regarding the textbooks that they've been using in their classrooms. And also the teachers want $10,000 raises. And part of the reason why is because many of them haven't received a raise in well over a decade. Now, several teachers and parents in Oklahoma who have shared photos and stories via social media of crumbling, outdated textbooks is part of their plea for more education funding. That's according to CNN and multiple media sources. So I'm gonna give you a few examples. Here is one of the books that was posted online, and they're doing this through Twitter and Facebook. Apparently in one classroom, a teacher complained that she had 25 anatomy books that were shared by about 70 students. Apparently the school district had changed some of the education requirements recently. And so the 25 anatomy books that she had were enough for the first time in a long time, but that's not a good thing. Why would they change the requirements? Obviously they're lowering standards because they don't have the resources necessary to educate our students. And then here's another example of some books that these teachers and students have to deal with. Now, with that said, what did Governor Mary Fallin have to say about these protesters, about these teachers? Take a look.
Teachers want more, but it's kind of like having a teenage kid that wants a better car.
But true, but their car has been taken away over the last 10 years.
Well, it has been a difficult time, and that's why I'm very proud that this year we were able to get something done for our teachers.
Yeah, they're always talking about the rich in the same way. Like, oh, they want another tax cut. They're just a bunch of spoiled brats. no, they're gonna help our economy and then you'll be way better off. And then like teachers will get increases, except they didn't. For all this time in the dark of night, they cut all the way down to 28%, all the way down to the bone. The history books have George W. Bush as president in Oklahoma.
Yes.
Okay, and so then when they now stand up to fight, they go, oh, okay, here's some crumbs, okay? Forget about the last several decades that we've been taken from you and never giving back. By the way, in your job, imagine if 10 years in a row, and that's a minimum. Every year you're like, okay, here we go. Am I gonna get a bonus? Am I gonna get a salary increase? And they're like, no, nothing.
Right.
Meanwhile, your health insurance prices are going through the roof. Housing's always going up. Everything is going up, but you never get a salary increase and you never get funding. And every year the teachers explain, one of the things that they fought hardest for is not just to get a salary increase for themselves, but to make sure you increase the funding for the schools. Because every year, at the beginning of the year, they have a conversation of, all right, what are we gonna cut from the budget this year? Okay, what are we gonna lose? How are we gonna make education worse for our kids? Why? They had to make choices. Now, the Republicans have the temerity to now turn around and say like, well, what do you want us to do, cut health care? Wait a minute, how come you never talk about the tax cuts?
Right.
Never, right? Because you already cut taxes for the rich and they already took the money home.
Right, and by the way, one aspect of this story that I feel like isn't getting enough attention is that in order to provide more funding for these teachers, the lawmakers had to agree to increase taxes for oil companies. And by the way, they hadn't increased taxes since the early 1990s. I think 1990 actually was the last time Oklahoma had increased taxes. And you know how the oil companies responded? These taxes are too high. I mean, and they're way more persuasive because they have much more sway over these lawmakers. They're the ones who donate to these lawmakers. So that's the reason why the teachers haven't gotten paid or haven't gotten a pay increase in well over a decade, whereas these oil companies hadn't had to deal with any tax increases. They've only gotten tax cuts, and now they have the audacity to complain as if they're the ones struggling. The oil companies are the ones struggling.
But Mary Fallon, who's in their back pocket, doesn't call them spoiled teenagers, right? And by the way, oil and gas that you get from Oklahoma is actually the property of the people of Oklahoma. So you can charge them anything you like. The reason your politicians don't do that and let them keep the overwhelming lion's share of the profits is because they get money from them. Right. That's how corruption works, and this is how it devastates your kids. So I love that the teachers are at the forefront of fighting back for you and your family.
Absolutely. All right, one final story for you guys, and I will get through this quickly because it's a doozy. So a woman did a DNA test through Ancestry.com, and the DNA test revealed that the person who she thought was her father was not her father. In fact, it was someone completely different who had also done an Ancestry.com DNA test and was in the system. Now, the test showed that her DNA matched a sample from a doctor more than 500 miles away, and though she had never heard of him, Ancestry.com predicted a parent-child relationship between the two. So this is a feature of Ancestry.com. If someone who has the same, genetic makeup as you is part of, this testing thing, then they'll come up if they have opted into that, right? So this doctor comes up and she looks at her birth certificate and realizes, wait, this obstetrician is the person who helped deliver me. And so then she found out that her parents had trouble conceiving, and so her mother got artificially inseminated by both who she thought was her biological father's sperm and then a anonymous donor sperm, but it turns out that the doctor had used his own sperm. And so now they're suing him. Drama.
Okay, so this Ancestry.com thing says this doctor 500 miles away, Gerald Mortimer. She tells her parents are like, uh-oh. They're trying to decide whether to tell her or not. Then she finds her birth certificate and it says Gerald Mortimer. And she's like, but it's not the parent. It's the doctor who delivered her, as Anna explained. She's like, wait a minute, I know that name.
Yeah, but what's crazy is the parents didn't know that the doctor had used his own sperm.
Yes, what the parents asked for, and this is weird, is use the father's sperm, which had issues, and an anonymous donor, and I explained. And I guess so, like, I guess we'll never know, right? But they wanted the donor to be over 6 feet tall and have like brown hair and blue eyes and all these specifications. And Mr. Mortimer did not, or Dr. Mortimer did not. He's like, I'm gonna use my own sperm anyway. And apparently when they moved away, they found it weird that the doctor broke down and started crying from their town. It's because he knew that it was his daughter.
This is so crazy. This is insane. So Ancestry.com, I don't know. I mean, take your DNA test at your own risk because you might find things that you don't want to know.
But you will apparently get at the truth. So upside, downside. Okay, guys, much love. We're out of time here. The post game is going to be fun as always, and Rebel headquarters is next. So bye bye. have an excellent Rebel headquarters for you guys today. I'm going to get right to the guest. Here comes Rick Trevino. In fact, here he is, right here in the studio. Good to meet you, Rick. How you doing, man?
Doing great, great. Thanks again for inviting me out.
No problem. Well, Rick is running in Texas 23rd District. If you watched our primary coverage on that night, you heard a lot of our screaming going, here comes Rick Trevino from behind. And he did it, and it turns out we're not the only ones. San Antonio Express News said that you were one of the great underdog stories in Texas.
Yeah.
And you were indeed. So now there's a new twist to the story because now you're in the runoff.
That's okay,
right. We'll get to that in a second. But for the folks who didn't see it on primary night, it was really, really exciting. There was 3 of you vying to get into that top 2. And tell us about the guy that you beat and that is not in the runoff.
Sure. So I beat a gentleman by the name of Jay Hewlings. Nice guy, but he is a establishment candidate. He was backed up by the Castro brothers, both Julian and Joaquin. Very influential in Texas politics. Also, I mean, back in October, the guy, before he even had a bio on his page or issues on his page, he had the endorsement of like 80 House representatives. So he was the DC candidate, and you know, the DCCC backed him up, Bold Pack, you know, also the Blue Dog Pack. So he was a third way, you know, New Democratic Coalition. So he's that moderate, proud moderate, and he raised and spent upwards to $500,000, and me and this other lady named Judy Canales, who ran a fantastic race in the Winter Garden area and in the district. We both beat Jay, who spent really what it would take a teacher about 10 years of work to, you know, to earn. So it really shows the accomplishment of what we've done, and that grassroots politics is really alive and well in the United States.
So Rick, he spent $500,000, but what did you spend? A little less than, like maybe $480,000 or $450,000. How much did you spend?
So I spent actually up until the primary about $22,000. So that equates to about $2.64 a vote, and Jay was spending upwards of close to $60 a vote, and then the winner, Gina Jones, she spent 10 times as much as me, about $20 a vote.
Yeah. Well, at least some consultants were very happy down in Texas. So.
Well, that's the thing. I think what you saw it also in the Texas 21st District as well. You see the DCCC really fleece these candidates, and whether they win or lose, they got paid. And I think you guys have done some reporting, and we've seen some reporting from the left media about these contract stipulations that these D-Trip candidates have to are held to. So it really limits the way they spend their money, and it's very. So basically, DC has created this environment that's insular. It serves itself, and instead of doing field and mail, they say, well, let's just do a bunch of TV. And I'm glad that these people are now in our race again and helping out Gina Jones, because they are the worst political minds that you could find in Texas. They don't have a good track record here. And it shows the disconnect that Washington has with our district. And that's why I think you're seeing a strength and resurgence of grassroots candidates like myself.
So it reminds me when FDR said, I welcome their hatred, when the powerful and the rich were fighting against them. This is a topsy-turvy world. In the old days, people would beg the DCCC to support them, right? Now, it's such a mark of shame in a sense that like if they go to support your opponent, you're like, yes.
Right? Well, I think what you're seeing is the American people realizing the influence of the donor class in our politics. And I like to tell people that if we continue to get sent people that come from the same places, that say the same things and take money from the same folks, we get the same results. And the proof of that representation is our lives. The donor class they're basically the ones that handpick these candidates, and that representation has led to the society that we're living in, which really doesn't work for working class people. So some candidates might actually like the fact that they're backed up by the DCCC, but they're so out of touch with what's going on, because the D-Trip, Emily's List, they are establishment candidates. Yes, they are socially progressive, but when it comes to economics and finance, they're as centrist and hard right as you could get. I mean, really, you have one party in this country. It's a business party. It's got 2 factions, Dems and Republicans, and I'm fighting within the Democratic Party just to represent working class people.
But you can't say you're working class, but I mean, in the past, though, you were a banker, right?
No, I've always been a teacher, but funny you bring that up. Like, you know, if I would have taken a different path in life, like even if I would have taught in a different area of town, you know, I don't think I would have been the person that I am. You know, teaching on the east side of San Antonio, one of the poorest zip codes in the United States of America. It was called the Promise Neighborhood Initiative. It was part of Obama's urban revitalization programs across the country, and I got to see poverty every single day, and it really created the kind of person that I am and the type of politician that I am. Is yes, I ruffle feathers, and the establishment doesn't like me, but they don't like me not because of my ideas, but because I'm not beholden to them.
Yeah, look, I'm giving the links here early. I want to make sure that you click on the links in the description box if you're watching on YouTube and comment section on Facebook. Rickfor23.com, justdemocrats.com/Rick2018 for donations. He's not going to get the big donor money, so you got to help him out. Yeah. You can tell because he's got that Just Democrat shirt. I've never seen that before.
Yeah,
that's badass. It's got your name on it. It's got and we were just talking about how you guys are like the Avengers, and here you come in with like an Avenger-like shirt.
Everybody loves these shirts. They gave me a dozen of these. I own 2, but the rest I've given out. But yeah, I think people always say, "Hey, what's up with that logo?" And then it starts that conversation about what JD's doing and how we're challenging corporate Democrats and supporting non-traditional candidates like myself. So I think it's really exciting to be part of this movement with JD, brand new Congress, our revolution. These are like the first iteration of new political organizations that came out of this movement. And we've seen success, and we're also trying to draw attention to, the hustle that is American politics and how the donor class has been influencing our lives.
So in this case, the DCCC have they literally endorsed your opponent now in the runoff? Yeah, and so isn't that weird? Because in the memo that we unveiled at the Young Turks, we found a memo that they had sent to the candidates, not you, because they never wanted to support you, and it said that that you shouldn't pick sides, and then you should have a kumbaya moment afterwards. And boy, we got a great one in 21st District when Derek Crow lost and then supported Mighty Mary Wilson, and now she's the JD candidate, et cetera. But they didn't seem to like that. You said you wanted unity, but they weren't supposed to pick sides. But here they are in a primary saying, I like this Democrat better than I like that Democrat because she has more money.
One of the most damaging narratives that came out of the 2016 primary was the fact, and that came out from the leaks that were written in English about how the D-Trip and the DNC tipped the scales for Hillary. The same thing, the Hillary, if you go back even in 08, the Hillary camp actually thought the D-Trip was tipping the scales for Obama then. So like you've seen that whether it was in 08 or 2016, you got a sense that the DCCC wasn't playing fair. And they know this, and they still are entering elections early. We saw what happened in Houston 7th, again, the attack against Laura Moser. I think it was really inappropriate, and if anything, I think they think these runoffs are an annoyance and they want to get through with them. It's like, and they're coming in and they're tipping the scale against a working class candidate, a teacher, a Mexican American, a district that's 70% Latino. I think it goes to show where they're at, and the D-Trip doesn't want what we want. And when I say we, I'm talking about the American people. They don't want Medicare for all, or living wage, or free college universities. They don't want that because that it will hurt their interest. And really you've seen the 1% co-op both parties, and I've been successful because of the issues that I'm running on, and working people like them.
Yeah, so Rick, I was just did a tweet earlier today supporting Allison Hartson, who's another JD, against Dianne Feinstein, and she sent her bots, and it's super obvious that the Feinstein campaign has these, all of a sudden all these real people appear with the same exact message. Why are you hurting the Democratic Party? Shouldn't we be fighting Republicans? Shouldn't we spend all of our money, because they're money obsessed? I'm like, yeah, you sound like a real person. Anyway, shouldn't we be spending all our money attacking Republicans? So I wanted to give you an opportunity to respond to that. So they're saying basically, why don't you just get out of the way already? And they've already picked a winner, and let's just save all of our money to fight against the Republican in the race.
Well, look, I've been a Democrat, at least at an official level, for like 6 years now. And when is it appropriate to have a debate? In a primary, in a runoff, I think that's the most appropriate time to have a debate. And in a democracy, you shouldn't be afraid of having a debate. And the reality is, if you look at the leadership of the Democratic Party, they always say that it's not appropriate to be critical of our own party, that as if it's going to hurt us. But really, what we need to have is is an honest dialogue about ourselves and where we're going as a party. You know, we've lost a lot of seats across the country ever since Obama came into office, and it's because we're not vision oriented. And what you've seen with JD and brand new Congress and OR, they're electing candidates, or they're supporting candidates that are looking for the future. And when we're talking about Medicare for all, we're talking about a society that guarantees health care as a right. That no longer is someone going to be profiteering off of your misfortune, and that's what we see here now. And you know, I know they're threatened by it, but we need to have this discussion because, you know, the American people have to see what is happening to their party. The Democratic Party doesn't talk about military foreign policy anymore. I have yet to be asked one question on this, and I don't think the media has done a good job vetting me or my opponents about where we stand on the Iran nuclear deal, our relationship with Saudi Arabia and Yemen, drones, you know, the leaks that came out of the drone papers, Jeremy Scahill, the assassination complex. Some of those stories, you know, they really troubled me. And I saw a Democratic Party that was there railing against the Bush administration when this happened. And now, because Obama embraced it and expanded those things, we're silent on them. We need to make sure that we're not only just sending Democrats and working class Democrats, but Democrats are going to say no to war. And it really does hurt me to see so many jobs in my district rely on that complex. And I want to move to a moral type of economy and a society that is trying to create peace, you know. And I just think that that's what's missing in our dialogue right now. You talked about Dianne Feinstein, and I'm not surprised that she has all those bots, seeing how she knows everything that the NSA is doing, and you know what I mean. It goes to show how politically vulnerable the American people are right now. I think with that hack of Cambridge Analytics, what we got to see what these institutions now are doing to manipulate the American people, keep them away from the issues that they really care about. And all we're talking about is Stormy Daniels or the chaos in the Trump White House, but we're not talking about the real problems in my district, which is the healthcare, which is the infrastructure. And in my district, all we ever talk about is the border. And now Trump is going to send the military to my district, insinuating that it's like a war zone, that it needs to be protected like that. And I mean, we need to have candidates that talk about real issues and then put the focus of the American people on the stuff that really matters and not this drama in DC.
Right. Well, when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right?
Yeah.
So their answer for everything, and I think why they like your opponent is, oh, we'll pretend it's about the jobs in your district, but it's really about the money that's coming in from the military industrial complex.
Sure.
Giant donor checks to Democratic Party over and over again. And if we don't recapture the Democratic Party, what's the point of beating the Republicans? If they're going to vote the same way anyway on all the financial issues and all the things that affect our lives, the wages, et cetera, then there's no point at all. So last thing for you, Rick. So she does have a serious financial advantage. Now she's got Washington backing her and all that. I'm sure they'll bring in some endorsements for her and et cetera. So how are you going to beat her?
So yeah, so in terms of financial numbers, she released today that she raised $700,000 in this first quarter, which is a disgusting amount of money. It really is. I mean, think about what all that money could be used for, and what it's going to be used for is paying consultants to make slick videos and then send dozens and dozens of mailers to people. So it's a really passive campaign. The way they interact with the electorate is going to be, you know, very passive and not personal. And I need a personal touch. So the way I'm going to win is to first concentrate on the areas where the voting base is active. That's in South Texas right now. There's a lot of countywide elections in that district. Also, there are some real advantages to me in this race. I am the only Mexican American in the race, so I could compete in the district the way she can, and that's bilingual. You know, I lived on the border all my life, over 20 years. My mother's from Nuevo Mexico. I have family on the border. I have family in Eagle Pass. So I understand the culture, so I'm going to be able to campaign and interact with the district in a political sense that she can't. And also, runoffs aren't primaries. I mean, not the same amount of voters come out. And what I've seen from this movement, the Bernie movement, is that we have a motivated voting base. And we know what's on the line, and that's why they were supporting me. Not just because they weren't looking for numbers and money to support the candidate, they were looking for ideas. So I know that on May 22nd, that they're gonna be there again. So you guys could help out by donating, signing up to volunteer, making phone calls. But you know, we have a candidate that's well-financed, and a candidate like me gets help when working people from across the country chip in a bit.
Rick, I got your nickname.
What is it?
Giant Slayer Rick Trevino.
Okay, yeah, I like that one, man.
Because look, you already took down Jay Hullings. He spent $400,000, and he's already gone. Now your next opponent's got $700,000 in just one quarter. But here comes Rick Trevino. Man. And then finally, we take down the Republican. Go 3 for 3. Rick Trevino, winner of the Battle Royale in the 23rd District. How great would it be to say that on election night?
Oh, it's going to be nice.
Man. All right, Giant Slayer, go get him.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
All right, everybody go to the links. Go help Rick. All right, we'll be back. All right, we're back. I'll tell you, man, Rick Trevino, if he pulls off that second stunning upset, we are gonna go nuts in the studio. It's gonna be bananas. All right, and I think he easily could. There's 30,000 Bernie Sanders voters there. He just gotta go get them, and he'll win that runoff. All right, I wanna let you guys know about a couple of great pieces of news coming out of Wisconsin. First of all, on the Young Turks, we talked about Rebecca Dallett winning. You know, what we neglected to mention is that her Republican opponent was backed by the Koch brothers and was NRA funded. And of course, he had a lot more money, but Dallett had someone else on their side, Working Families Party. And so they backed her, others did as well, and she wound up with a 12-point victory there, which stunned Wisconsin Republicans enough for Scott Walker again to send out tweets going, warning, warning, we're in a lot of trouble over here. They might come after me next. That's exactly right. But I want to tell you about another race too. Stephen Shea, a public educator and a union activist, he won in the 8th district of Milwaukee County Board of Supervisors, and he beat someone for County Board of Supervisors. He beat someone that spent $130,000, and of course was backed by super PACs, etc. Who was Stephen Shea backed by? The Working Families Party. So watch out for those guys. They're doing some amazing work, and if they're backing a candidate, that means that candidate is really progressive and is going to fight for the middle class and for the all of us, and not for the donors. So 2 good results for them in Wisconsin and for all of us. Okay, now next guest for you guys. Joining us now, Randy Hopkins. He's running Utah's 2nd district for United States Congress. Randy, welcome to Rebel headquarters.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem. So Randy, you're in a deeply Republican district. Let's just keep it real, okay?
Absolutely, yes.
So talk to me about your battle plan for how you're gonna swing those folks.
Wow, I think I've got one advantage, and that's my age. You know, I'm not coming into this as a young man. I've got a lot of experience. I worked 35 years with the state of Utah. I've worked with all of the different government programs to help people when they're down on their luck, unemployment insurance, Trade Act. I've helped people with training. And I think right now I can help swing some of these older workers who have traditionally voted for Republicans or independents who have voted Republican. And the way, I think one of the reasons that I can do this is because of health care. I firmly believe that in this country, the wealthiest country on earth, we need to have universal, affordable health care for everyone. And that is very doable with putting everybody onto Medicare. I'm on Medicare. I love Medicare. I've got all of these senior citizens who are on Medicare. They love it. It's a great program. It is a Republican lie when they say that the government has no place in the health insurance business and that they'll just screw it up. We've got over 44 million people on Medicare. The federal government has experience in Medicare, and it's been going for over 50 years. And every senior that votes Republican is voting against their own self-interest. With this $20 trillion debt, and now the tax cuts, they're going to add another $1 trillion at least to this deficit. The Republicans have said, we cannot afford Social Security, we cannot afford Medicare. Why would any senior want to continue voting for Republicans?
Randy, I like your fighting spirit. So you're right. My parents went on Medicare and they were shocked at how good it was. Because when they were on private insurance, they had to constantly fight and bureaucracy and paperwork and are we going to be covered or not covered? They get on Medicare, they're like, oh, we're just covered. That's it, it's done. And by the way, it costs a lot less than private health insurance.
Oh, it costs so much less.
No-brainer. The only reason we don't do it is because of the corruption.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Listen, Obamacare was a step in the right direction. But the problem with Obamacare was it was still run by insurance companies. It was not the government. It was private insurance companies. They have a profit motive. Take the profit motive out of healthcare. No one should be worried about going to the doctor because they can't afford it. Let me just give you a personal experience here. I've got a couple of granddaughters that have asthma. And my daughter was telling me the other day that one of my granddaughters had an asthma attack in the middle of the night. And my daughter had to make a decision. Do I go to the emergency room knowing how much that's going to cost, or do I treat her at home? We should not be putting parents into that situation or anybody else that we worry about going to the doctor or getting appropriate medical care because we can't afford it. In this country, we can't afford it. And if everyone was on a single payer like Medicare, it would be the cheapest way to go and everybody be covered.
Yeah, I think there's an uprising in this country. And so I'm really curious to see how races like yours play out. So how long have you been in the race here, and have you gotten a chance to test out your message with the average folks in your district?
Not a lot. I've been in since January, and right now we have a state convention that will be happening on April 28th, and that's where the Democratic Party will be nominating their candidate for this district. There's one other person, one other Democrat running for this district. So my focus right now is with these delegates. And in fact, tonight after this, I have a meet and greet with delegates in my local area. So that's what I'm focusing on, is to get this delegate vote, to get the candidacy for the party. And then I can really start going out after the general voter. Now, it's interesting. I live a few blocks from Chris Stewart, who I'm running against, the Republican.
Oh, okay. So, Randy, are you the more progressive person in the race among the Democrats?
I think we are probably equal in that. Our views on most things are pretty similar, as far as I can tell. Like I say, I think the advantage I've got is the only way a Democrat can win in this district is if they can pull some of the traditional Republican voters, some of the independents who have voted Republican, if they can pull them over. This is the year it can be done because of Donald Trump. I've got very conservative friends. I've got one who has told me, please do your whole campaign on impeaching Trump. And he's a very conservative Republican. So I know I can bring some of those people over. So that's going to be the key. That is definitely going to be the key. If I can bring over some of these older voters, and I can bring over independents, because we have a lot of independents in this district, then this is the year we can do this. We can make a difference.
So, Randy, one last thing. You're Mormon, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So why do Mormons have more hesitation about Donald Trump? Because Utah is, generally speaking, very conservative. Mormons are generally speaking more conservative, but they've never taken a shining to Donald Trump. Why is that?
I think a couple of reasons. Surely one of the big reasons is his affairs, his marital affairs. Here's a man who has bragged about groping women, who has bragged about his marital affairs. That is one big reason why the Mormons have some negative feelings towards Trump. And another big reason is the immigration policy. We believe that everybody should be treated with dignity, and human rights should prevail. And I don't know anybody, whether Democrat or Republican, that says we should not secure our borders. But we do not need a wall. And especially with this $20 trillion deficit, we don't want to spend billions on a wall that's unnecessary. This is the 21st century. We can protect our border with modern technology. Let's do that. The other thing is, we have lost our moral standing in the world because of Donald Trump. We can no longer stand up as the champion of human rights to the rest of the world because of his incendiary rhetoric. The way he's called out different people, his denigrating remarks against Mexicans, against black people, when he said that there were good people in the white supremacist movement. Come on, that is ridiculous. We should not have any immigration policy that separates families. That is wrong, it's immoral, and it's un-American. Our immigration policy should be, if you've been here for several years and you've not committed any other crimes, bring these people out of the shadows. Let's give them legal Social Security numbers and give them a path to being able to stay here legally. And that includes the Dreamers. That's ridiculous for a kid who's been here 20 years and knows no other country to say, hey, we may ship you back to some country that you know nothing about. And if I've got time, let me tell you one personal experience. I was living in Michigan. My wife and I were doing some volunteer work with inner city Michigan, helping people with employment and welfare needs. And I met a friend of mine who was from Cuba. He was brought here at 4 years old from Cuba. He has never become a U.S. citizen, and he's in his 50s now. He is afraid. He is afraid that he could be deported. That is just wrong.
All right, Randy Hopkins with a lot of fire in his belly. I like it.
I'm excited for this race. I'm excited. Let's do it. And listen, I want to tell you, I want to call out Chris Stewart. I would love to have a debate with Chris Stewart on your program. Let's do it.
All right. Well, you know what? We'll invite him. and let's see what happens.
Great.
That would be fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
So everybody check out randyhopkinsforcongress.org. And then, of course, all the links are down below in the description box on YouTube and in the comment section on Facebook. Randy Hopkins, a lot of passion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And donations are always welcome.
I suspect. Yes. All right. Good. We got a fighter in Utah. All right, guys. We're going to take a quick break here for all the members. We'll be right back, obviously. If you want to become a member, get the postgame, tytnetwork.com/join. And after the postgame, old school. So you also get that as part of membership. All right, we'll be back.